Thank you. Honorable members, as usual, let's sit in order and make sure that we protect ourselves and others. The first item on the order paper is is a motion in the name of the Chief Whip of the majority party. I wish to recognize the Chief Whip, the Honorable Majorgina.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. To honorable members, I hereby move that this House suspends Rule 290, subsection 2A, which provides inter alia that the debate on the second reading of the bill may not commence before at least 3 assembly working days have elapsed since committee's report was tabled. For the purposes of conducting the second reading debate on the electoral amendment bill, I hereby move, Chair, that on the 3rd of December, we allow this report to be tabled. I move, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chief Whip. Are there any objections to the motion as raised? No objections, agreed. Do we have somebody on the line? No, agreed to. The first order of the day, can the secretary give it to us?
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Transport.
Thank you very much. The Honorable, the Chief Whip, what do we do?
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I hereby move that this House adopt this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The motion is that the report be adopted, and I've got a request for declarations. Let me just remind all the members that are going to speak that on the BRRR declarations, you only have 2 minutes. All the parties have 2 minutes each. I'm going to stop you. I won't allow you to participate beyond that. Thank you. Can I have the DA? Declarations?
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The Department of Transport's budgetary needs and shortfalls compared to the department's operational efficiency and performance is a spirited attempt to redefine misalignment. Honorable Chairperson, it is against this background that we are convinced that the priorities of this department are confused and misaligned. The department is failing to play an effective oversight over the entities they oversee. A case in point, the Passenger Railway Association of South Africa and its subsidiaries, namely Intersight and Autopex, had not yet tabled their reports at the time they met with the Portfolio Committee. Honorable Chairperson, the KPI's achievement rate for the department is very high, yet the service delivery on the ground has almost grounded to a halt in the rail and public transport programs. There are no trains in the tracks. In actual fact, there are no tracks or cables. Honorable Chairperson, to date, this very department is continuously playing hide and seek over the e-tolls issue, but we are not surprised because the Tutarians are chasing likes and retweets instead of scrapping e-tolls. The Chief Whip is just one nightmare that refuses to go away. Honorable Chairperson, in closing, the DA suggested to commend the tweetist on the filling of all vacant posts in the boards of entities. However, the ANC in the Portfolio Committee rejected this noble suggestion. Again, we acknowledge the need to develop proposals to stop the bleeding of the road accident fund. Again, the ANC rejected this idea. Honorable Chairperson, the findings of the Auditor-General on the department and its entities paints a picture of mismanagement, a picture of failing to account. Honorable Chairperson, it is our view that the department needs to get the act together and start serving the people of South Africa. I thank you.
Thokoze Bujuma. EFF?
Thank you, Chairperson. House Chair. Chairperson, the EFF rejects the budgetary review and recommendation report of the PC on transport. It is very difficult to support budget where the Department of Transport had promised to restore proper corporate government, but had to be forced by the courts to appoint the board of PRASA. Promised to create the jobs for the unemployed, but failed to do so. Identified salary as one of the strategic priorities, and yet, after investing 5.8 billion on the R573 Moloto Road project, the road continues to claim lives. Currently, there are 100 cases of fraud and corruption that the Road Transport Management Center is dealing with.
Ifrizile ntate Shabangu, o ka nna wa kwala video hore maybe bandwidth e be better. O freezile papa.
Which are unresolved. Subsidies. Currently, there are 100 cases of fraud and corruption that Road Transport Management Center is dealing with. COVID-19 has been used as an excuse by PRASA subsidiaries for not proceeding with their report to the committee. There is still a high usage of consultant by the department and its entities. And if the EFF support this report, that will be a gross violation of the economic freedom fighters' cardinal pillar number 5, where we are encouraging the state to build internal capacity and abolish the use of tenders and consultants. Lastly, the lack of consequence management and the continuation of the violation of subsidy chain management processes has been identified by the Auditor-General as one of the major problems in transport department, and we will be going against the EFF 7 cardinal pillar of building an open, accountable, and corrupt-free government if we agree with this report. We therefore reject this report, Madam. Thank you.
Thank you, Babshabangu. The IFP.
Honorable Chairperson, I think that it is appropriate to provide some education to the ruling party on the purpose of budgetary review and recommendation overall. The purpose is for us as a parliament to engage and assess the progress of each department in their work to provide clean governance. However, year after year, we hear the same empty promises that the department will do better. They will cut irregular expenditure. They will consider the recommendation by the portfolio committee to rectify all that is wrong. Yet every year it is the same story of irregular and wasteful expenditure, vacancies, material findings by the Auditor-General. The PRRR table here today dealing with the transport sector is not different from before. It has not made the substantial progress needed in attending to committee's 2019-2020 recommendation and last year AG recommendations. The minister simply left the same failing to oversight the mechanism the same. We cannot expect any changes for good governance if we accept the lax response we are being insulted with today. And how can we forget the ruling party's next failing entity, PRASA? The committee notes that if this entity does not rectify its funding model, it will not soon face liquidity concern as well. With this damning advice by the department, it is evident that South African will not see any of promises made by the ruling party in the near future for a more accessible, affordable safety rail system. The stubbornness to ensure clean governance and working model for development can also be seen in the protracted stalemate regarding the issues of e-tolls. Every year these issues raised, and every year we are promised changes is on the way or negotiations are ongoing. Now it is clear that this is just
Thank you.
For the
Honorable Member. FF plus. FF plus.
No declaration, Madam Chair.
I couldn't hear.
No declaration, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. SCDP.
Thank you, Honorary Chairperson. The Department of Transport is indeed the breath and the heartbeat of South Africa's economic growth and social development. Almost everybody needs transport on a daily basis. Businesses can't operate successfully without reliable transport to ferry goods from one point to the other. Sadly, broken infrastructure, including potholes, bad roads, stolen rail tracks, and lack of reliable transport hinder economic growth. A number of its entities are also in serious trouble. With high level and other costs, the RAF is a risk to the fiscus and an underperformer, despite the extra 9 cents a litre we have been paying at the petrol station since the 1st of April. Sanral is still hoping that Gauteng motorists will decide to pay e-tolls and save it from bankruptcy. And PRASA is in ICU on a ventilator, having received a disclaimer from the Auditor-General for the 2nd year in a row. It is a disgrace and a sheer incompetence that only 7 of Metro Rail's 34 commuter lines are operating with reduced services because of government's negligence, incompetence, and failure to protect its asset. Over 2 billion rands is needed to fix the damage that has been done by vandals to Gauteng train stations over the past 3 years. Even the committee is concerned that measures put in place to detect and all the irregular expenditure that must be prevented are not working. The ACDP will therefore not be supporting this BRR report. Thank you.
Thank you. UDM?
Not declaring on this one, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. ATM? No, it's me. Good? Not here. NFP? I saw Babu Sbisi coming on. Babu Sbisi, you can speak. You can unmute. Babu Sbisi, before uqala ngibawa ungalayiti video, uzama ukukhuluma ngaphandle kwayo. Oh. Sewungenile mara sikuzwa ba.
Chair. Chair.
Yes. Yes, Honorable Sibisi. Honorable Sibisi. We'll come back to you, Babu Sibisi. Try to find a space that you can speak from. You keep on hanging. I don't know what's happening. I think it's your bandwidth. Try to find space. I'll bring you in before the last declaration. AIC.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. As African Congress, we hope that the vacant posts that exist be filled so that proper work will be done. And again, the issue of e-tolls will be attended to, and the clear direction now should be given. The PRASA issues should be attended by this department. For these purpose, now the service delivery will be given to the people. We also hope that the financial assistance should also be given to the taxi industry, because this has long been overdue. Having those expectations in our mind, then we support this report.
Thank you. Cope? Not Cope, not here. Al-Jama?
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. More must be done for the personal safety of commuters, and also in the weeks coming up, it will help reduce road accidents if alcohol is banned, and that must be considered in the next few days. Honorable House Speaker Al-Jamaa supports the report.
Thank you. Babu Sbisi, NFP, are you okay now to speak?
I think so, Chairperson. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. Don't switch on your
Chairperson?
video. Continue. I can hear you clearly. Continue.
Yes.
Don't switch on. Proceed. Slinde wena Babu Sbisi is cutting yourself.
The national following from the report of the committee. Yes, out of the committee. Unauthorized expenditure. Yes, ma'am. Chairperson? Chair?
Yes, continue. We hear you very well. Sikuzwa kahle baba, qhubeka. But we pay and we moshepi.
Can I come in, Chair?
Yes, whip of IFP.
NFP.
I mean,
Chair.
NFP.
Thank
Yes,
you.
sorry, IFP.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. I will go ahead with this. The National Freedom Party notes the report of the committee. The unauthorized expenditure for the last three financial 2013, 14, 15, and 16, 17 ended up to be 1.3 billion rand. Irregular expenditure, million rand was declared. Added to that is the report of the Auditor-General. The overall transport portfolio continues to have challenges with effective implementation of control mechanisms. The majority of auditees. This is an indication of a lack of financial discipline, the deliberate lack of compliance with legislation, and lack of consequence management. PRASA has once again received a disclaimer of opinion for the second year in a row. And while I'm at that, let me highlight the problem that even the railway police tend to have with PRASA not having paid his electricity and things, and they are quite often in the dark. Governance challenges have continued in the 2019-20 financial year for PRASA with the removal of the board and the appointment of administrator who was set aside by the High Court after year-end. PRASA's failing infrastructure together with the repeated incidents of accidents, theft, vandalism, delays, and security issues continue to impact on both the rail communities and the ability of the agency to effectively discharge. The National Freedom Party would like to measures to be put in place by the department to address the 320,000 drivers license backlog. This is hurting the car sales industry. The National Freedom Party will support the report tabled here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The ANC. Maramadwa in the house.
Muhulisei mudzula chidulo wandu ziminista na vathusi chimebi chihulwane cha lihoro livusi mirado ya butano la lushaka rinesa dzangano la African National Congress rikhoutikedza muvigo wa mugaganyagwama na themendelo ya muhasho na zwipiḓa zwawo kha tshifhinga tshine tsha khou lavheleswa. Komiti ya vhuendi yo dzula ya saukanya muvigo wa mugaganyagwama na themendelo zwa muhasho na zwipiḓa. Ri ralo ngauri komiti yo fhululedza zwipiḓa zwa muhasho zwingaho CBRTA, DLCA, SACA na zwiṅwe zwe zwa kona u swikelela tshiimo tsha nṱhesa tsho kunaho nga muṱola mbalelano. Unqualified audit opinion report with no material findings. Komiti yo vhona mvelaphanḓa nnzhi yo vha hone kha mbekanyomaitele dza muhasho wa vhuendi. Fhedzi ro kwamea nga maanḓa nga mbekanyomaitele ya vhuṋa ya vhuendi ha bada nge hu si vhe na tsheo yo dzhiwaho kha GFIP, Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project. Maelana na komiti i khou ita khuwelelo kha minista wa vhuendi u wana tsheo nga tshihaḓu kha fhungo ḽa e-toll. Ro dovha hafhu ra sedza mambiwa o livhanaho na PRASA nga muṱolambalelano. PRASA yo wana disclaimer ṅwaha wa vhuvhili, ndi zwone nahone i dzula i mulomoni ya vhathu. Komiti yo fhululedza minista kha u ṋanga bodo. Ro ṱuṱuwedza minista na bodo uri vha vhone uri hu na mvelaphanḓa kha PRASA hu si na u kundelwa, ngauri ndi yone nḓila ine vhathu vha hashu vha shumisa tshiendedzi tsha train, ngauri a i ḓuri nahone kha muhasho riri u nembelela ha shamba a si wa halo. Murumba kha u ṱambele zwanḓa.
Ndo livhuwa. Thank you very much. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
House Chair, please note the objection of the DA.
The DA,
And the ACDP, thank you.
ACDP,
And the Freedom Front Plus, Chairperson.
FF Plus, yes.
And the IFP, Chairperson.
Thank you, IFP, noted. Any other party? None.
And
The
EFF, Chairperson.
Thank you, EFF, noted, all noted, and the motion is, the report is therefore agreed to with the observation of all the objections. The secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor.
Sosibepi wenhlangano ebusako enkulu.
Enkosi kakhulu sihlalo wendlu. Sihlalo ndiphakamisa into yoba le ndlu yamkele le ngxelo izawuthiwa thatha apha, enkosi.
Sithokoze mhlonitshwa. The motion is that the report be adopted, but we have a request for declaration. The DA.
Chair, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, I'm sad to report that the report emanating from the portfolio is a farce. It could easily be said that in any other country in the world, the minister and the DG would resign. Every single entity within the department, except for the CCMA, has failed the workers of South Africa. The compensation fund has been dysfunctional for over 2 decades. The UIF has shown the workforce how they treat people in their hour of need. NEDLAC does not speak on behalf of the unemployed. Productivity South Africa has produced one of the most unproductive workforces in the world. Unemployment has reached epidemic proportions. Our labor legislation and regulations have continuously acted as a handbrake to job creation. The department should hang their head in shame and should apologize to both the workers of South Africa and to the other half who are seeking work. The department spends good money on exercises that lead the Auditor-General to declare failures. The results produced cannot even pretend to be service delivery. The only institution that has produced world-class results has been the CCMA. They have managed against all odds to enforce labor legislation, keep labor peace, and resolve disputes. Our esteemed minister and his trusted right-hand man, the DG, in their wisdom, continuously to reduce the CCMA's budget over this period and have plans to reduce the budget over the next 2 years. These reductions are in the process of destroying the only entity that actually works. Both the minister and the DG need to explain to the workforce of South Africa why the workers of South Africa are being used to fund SAA, Eskom, and other parastatals. It is a crying shame that the government of South Africa today is doing everything in its power to attack the workers of South Africa. Labor does not work. Thank you, Chair.
EFF?
Thank you, Chair. Okay. No,
Yes,
Chairperson,
Ma'am
Chair, I
Conto.
wanted to say that my member is having some difficulties to connect, but she will try. If she fails, I'll take it over.
Thank you, no problem. Continue, Ma'am Conto. Honorable, continue.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, this department is one of the most relevant, together with its entities, given the unemployment crisis we face as a country. Under the ruling party's watch, more than 10.3 million young people, mainly Black, women, and the disabled people living with the disabilities are willing to work, ready to work, and even willing to relocate but cannot find work. There is no plan to create jobs or protect jobs that exist. Instead, the economic stimulus package that was meant to create jobs only exists in the imagination of the president and his ministers. What is regrettable, Chairperson, is that the committee, with the full knowledge that the previous budget review and recommendations didn't materialize in job creation, went ahead and brought before the House another report not worth the paper it is written on. It is time we impose a moratorium on job cuts. Companies must be obligated to demonstrate compelling evidence before cutting jobs, and this goes for state-owned enterprises. It is time we open criminal cases for companies that fraudulently accessed temporary employee relief scheme funds. It is time we open criminal cases for companies that have fraudulently withheld UIF funds when workers could not buy food for their families. But the most important recommendation for the BRRR should have made was to reject National Treasury's austerity policies that will cause more unemployment. As long as the government is in the path of austerities, this department's work will always be meaningless. Considering the above, Chair, the EFF rejects the budget review and recommendation report by the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labor. I thank you.
Thank you. IFP.
Siyathokoza mhlonishwa sihlalo nabalungu eParliament wonke. Sihlalo umbiko phambi kwethu usikhombisa ukuthi ekuqaleni nje kwalonyaka izinga lokungaqasheki kwabantu belihleli ku-30%, futhi ingaphezulu kuka-3 million imisebenzi elahlekile kusuka lapho. In the previous years, the coming months would have created some seasonal or short-term employment in key sectors such as tourism and retail. However, projections amidst the COVID-19 pandemic indicates that this will not be the case this year. The President recently launched the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, which places job creation at the center. The Department of Employment and Labor has a number of entities reporting to it, including the Productivity South Africa and Supported Employment Enterprises. Unfortunately, many everyday South Africans do not know of these entities or of the work they do. What they do know is that when they go out to look for jobs, they come back home with nothing. Honorable members, without cooperation and buy-in from the private sector, the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan will become yet another pipe dream. The IFP believes that the business sector needs to be roped in all employment creation plans through an incentive-based system. Businesses can be encouraged to create more employment by providing employers with taxation benefits for medical aid, pension, education, and skills training. Another key issue we wish to re-emphasize is that we need to ensure that the majority of employment opportunities available are given to South Africans, since we serve South Africans. The Department of Employment and Labor needs to do more to hold employers accountable to the minimum standards of employment and to discourage them from opting for underemployment of foreign nationals. Lastly, in order to truly be effective, the Department of Employment and Labor needs to focus on the decentralizing of its powers and efforts to the provinces.
Siyathokoza. FF Plus.
Siyayixhasa ke umbiko lo wekomiti.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable House Chair, the unemployment rate in South Africa is the highest we've ever seen. Not due to COVID, mind you, because it was already on the rise before the pandemic. Our economy is under immense strain and socio-economic circumstances are dire. These are not the ideal circumstances in which the department has to fulfill its expanded mandate of both implementing and monitoring the implementation of labour legislation and enabling job creation. Die departement en regering doen hulself natuurlik ook nie 'n guns deur arbeids- en ander wetgewing te implementeer wat juis hierdie ideale kortwek nie. En deur die privaat sektor keer op keer as die swart skaap vir julle mislukkings uit te kry, werk lankal nie meer nie. Daar is bepaalde tekortkominge in die departement van arbeid en werkskepping en sy entiteite wat allereers aangespreek sal moet word. Ek noem kortliks 3 voorbeelde. Die werkloosheidsversekeringsfonds is deur 'n absolute loutering en krediet moet gegee word waar dit toekom, maar die duisende begunstigdes wat steeds vir betaling wag, telke vertragings en oponthouding met betalings, bedrog en korrupsie, vlek ongelukkige prentjie wat veel anders moes gelyk het. Die ongevalle kommissaris se voortgesette probleme, veral ten opsigte van agterstallige uitbetalings en die konstante Camp Easy struikelblokke, is steeds nie aangespreek nie en terugvoer in die verband is van min waarde vir die aan wie se lewens 'n verskil gemaak moes word, maar nie is nie. En die arme CCMA, wie reeds onder reuse druk met beperkte hulpbronne werk, moet nou met 'n verminderde begroting oor die weg kom. Swak bestuur aan die een kant en kortsigtige drakoniese wetgewing aan die ander kant veroorsaak dat werkloosheid bloot toeneem, wat weer 'n bepaalde uitwerking op die fiskus en die land se ekonomie het. Die invloed van hierdie departement se funksionaliteit is soos 'n klippie in 'n dam, wat 'n rimpel-effek op die ganse ekonomie en welstand van ons land het. Alvorens herhalende probleme en konstante tekortkominge nie eerlik en met 'n politieke wil om dit te doen aangespreek word nie, sal hierdie departement nie in sy doel slaag nie. Ek dank u.
Dankie. ACGP.
Honourable House Chair, the ACDP notes the mandate that this department has to regulate the labour market through policies and programs developed in consultation with social partners, which are aimed at improving economic efficiency and productivity and the creation of decent employment, amongst others. So while the Department of Employment and Labour is not solely responsible for the creation of decent employment, this department and others under the ruling party must accept responsibility for the dismal performance in the employment rate in South Africa. According to Stats SA, the latest employment numbers for the third quarter of 2020 show how the national lockdown has hammered jobs in South Africa. The unemployment rate increased to 43.1% on the expanded definition compared to the second quarter of 2020. Of the 2.8 million people who left the country's workforce during lockdown, only 543,000 managed to get their jobs back, leaving 2.2 million unemployed. The ACGP was amongst the first of political parties calling for an easing of restrictions on the economy during the lockdown, citing that more people may die as a result of the onerous restrictions than from the virus itself. The ACGP welcomes the recommendations in the report, which have the intention of turning things around in the department, including dealing with the unqualified audit opinion, with irregular expenditure of 1.36 million and fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 698,000. Earlier this year, the Auditor-General released a damning report on the payment of TERS and social grants after it was found that the new system implemented for TERS incorrectly calculated the benefits for the first lockdown period between 27th of March to 30th of April, not taking into account the actual period of inactivity and the portion of salary paid by employers, resulting in significant overpayments. The Department of Employment and Labour must get its house in order. The ACDP will not accept this report. I thank you.
Stokoze. Bathini kwa UDM.
House Chair, thank you very much. Yes, South Africa faces a chronic, what's happening now? Am I still there?
Yep, we can hear you clearly.
Oh, sorry. I thought I got disconnected. Sorry, South Africa faces a chronic unemployment problem. as many of you are already aware, that in terms of the official definition of unemployment, the unemployment rate stands at about 30%. But if one were to factor in the number of discouraged work seekers, the unemployment rate, as you would know, it stands at well above 50% in South Africa. This is a crisis that when you have a department such as the Department of Employment and Labor, that department is tasked with the responsibility of creating an environment that is conducive for employment and job creation to occur. However, in the majority of instances, our concern is that Kala City Minister, you would look at Indoba, the UIF monies is basically ngabantu recently. Abanye babo abakazifumani, and the department does not seem to be doing enough ngezonto. And okwesibini, abantu abasebenzi abatye imali zomamcirha baseKhayelitsha, omadlamini bangapha eMdantsane nabanye baseSoweto ukuthi bangakwazi ufumana abakatshajwa criminally sibabone bevalelwa kuba betya imali zabasebenzi. Okwesibini, the department is failing to address an important issue, the exploitation of foreign nationals by the private sector. Apho kuthelekiswa umuntu omnyama nomnyama, kukhutshwa umuntu omnyama emsebenzini waseMzantsi Afrika, kufakwe omnye umuntu omnyama kodwa efakwa ngokwe-conditions ezingaphansi kwezo zilindele kwi-basic conditions of employment. It's something that the department is failing to address, which creates a lot of anger and resentment among communities in South Africa. At times, what we usually inappropriately call is xenophobic violence. See United Democratic Movement ngezi zizathu nokuthi ufumanise ukuthi imali ityiwa ngendlela kungabikho accountability, kungabanjwa mntu nakule department kuba i-wasteful and fruitless expenditure, irregular expenditure yayo i-1.3 million rand as the Auditor-General ifindile, but no steps have been taken against those who have gained from irregular expenditure. Reasons why we're not supporting the report. Thank you.
Sixoleleni kwa-ATM nithini? Good. NFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The National Freedom Party notes the report, BRR report of the Department of Labor tabled here and will support the report. Let me start off by highlighting some of the challenges. Of course, irregular expenditure, unlawful and fruitless expenditure continues to haunt this particular department. Let me also add the problem of unemployment, which is sitting in well over 30% in the country, is a matter that the department needs to pay attention to. But over and above that, one of the things that we've identified, Honorable House Chair, is foreign businesses in South Africa are employing foreigners and paying them at a rate of 70 Rand a day, despite the fact that labor inspectors from the department frequently visit these outlets and do very little or nothing about it. More importantly, these employees are not registered with the Department of Labor and have also been claiming that TERS benefit. So they've been employed, earning 70 Rand a day, claiming the TERS because these employers refuse to register them, despite the fact that we are paying inspectors to go out there and ensure that there is a higher level of compliance. What the National Freedom Party is calling for greater coordination between the Department of Labor, South African Revenue Services, and the local authorities, the local municipalities who issue licenses to these businesses that are conducting their businesses in these respective municipalities. The problem of foreign drivers in South Africa and the burning of trucks must be attributed to the problem of labor because of the low salary scale that foreigners get paid, and that is why companies in South Africa prefer to want to employ foreigners in the South Africa. And so it falls within the mandate of the Department of Labor to also deal with this problem of foreign drivers and foreign companies and local businesses that are exploiting the situation. All right, the next
time is
report. Thank you.
AIC. Aleo. Cope.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and members. there are laws at the moment in the country, but the problem is that these laws are not implemented. So coming up with any other thing over and above what we already have does not take us anywhere at all. What we have is, for example, the speaker at the moment as we here are sitting is a court. One of the former ministers here was in court for a very long time because the workers that get employed are poor people from outside of South Africa who have run from their own countries to South Africa for safety, etc., and they are just being exploited. That's one of the major problems. And why does that happen? It's basically because there are laws here in South Africa to take care of the workers and so on, but for these workers to be exploited, for the employers here to get whatever they want, they do whatever they want, they take people from outside of South Africa so that I'm referring to the employers here, follow the laws. Now, the other thing is, government always rises to claim victory and say, we now have risen by 2%, by 3%, we're improving, and yet that is not the case. The point that I'm raising is, who does this analysis? Where do they go? I mean, if you go to Kaelicha and so on, and other areas, you go to Hamarisha Ditoro, we are Honorable Chairperson, we are have they ever seen these people? You go to the townships where Comrade Hope, for example, comes from. Have they ever seen these people coming to check whether those poor people work or not? Now, this is therefore not scientific, and they are therefore a very serious problem. We don't support this. Oh, okay.
Al-Jama?
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, decent work, full employment in South Africa, doubling our productivity rate, and ensuring that mediation and conciliation continues in the CCMA to resolve labor disputes are some of the challenges that we have, and that's why we support this report, because the Minister of Labour has taken the department to a higher level with the support of the chair of the Portfolio Committee, and they can do something about all of that during the term of the 6th Parliament. We look forward to their leadership, and Al-Jama supports the report. Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hendricks. Babu Nonsele, Itini ANC.
House Chair, President Ramaphosa, in his address on the 15th of October, during the joint sitting, reminded the nation of the economic crisis we face, in particular the ravages that have been caused by COVID-19 globally, and that the countries in the north are in fact reimposing lockdown, which in fact means severe conditions for the economic outlook globally. South Africa needs to implement decisive economic reconstruction and recovery measures, whilst at the same time containing the spread of the virus. This approach is informed by the state of the economy, particularly with regard to jobs. As already alluded to, Chair, that the third quarterly labor force survey of 2020 shows that the country narrow definition of unemployment grew by 30.8%, whilst the broader definition grew by 43.1%. By any measure, this is a crisis. The committee noted that the lockdown and the closure of services resulted in a surplus in the department, which amounted to 229.7 million. There was consensus amongst the parties that in the committee that to save jobs and to ensure that the continuation of CCMA services is in fact prioritized. Sivumelana ukuthi lento yokuthi kunqandwe ukuthi abantu bazingenele CCMA
nokuthi kubhataliswe yingxaki enkulu. Ngoba loo nto iza kubangela ukuthi abasebenzi ngakumbi abo baziimpula zikalujaca bangakwazi ukuphinda bayisebenzise i-CCMA. Siyavumelana ke ngoku ukuthi iyakuthi loo nto leyo yophule iinjongo zokumisa nendlela yokuthi i-CCMA ibe nokusebenzisana ikwazi ukuncedisana nabantu abakwaziyo ukuthi babe nokufikelela kuyo. Yingxaki ke leyo ethi ibe khona nasezinkundleni zethu apho abantu abanemali ingabona bakwazi ukuthi bafumane ukumelwa ngabona amagqwetha apheleleyo. Siyayixhasa iripoti. Enkosi.
Enkosi. Isibawo ukuthi lo mbiko umukelwe. Kukhona abaphikisana naloko? Any objections?
House Chair, please note the objection of the Democratic Alliance.
DA,
And the ACDP, thank you.
ACDP,
And the Freedom Front Plus, please.
Freedom Front Plus,
UDM.
UDM.
EFF.
Yes. Thank you, EFF. Any other party? None. Observing all the objections, the report has been adopted. Thank you very much. We now move to order number 3, the Secretary.
Consideration of budgetary review and recommendation report of Portfolio Committee on Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development on Agriculture, vote 24.
Thank you. The Honorable, the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Ke a leboha modulasetulo ke sisinya hore ntlo ena ya amoele tlaleo ena e tla bewang mona. Ke a leboha.
Re leboge. Ke na le dikopo tsa di-declaration, ke tla qala ka the DA.
Modulasetulo, Benjamin Franklin once said, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. Section 5 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act of 2009 sets out clear procedures to be followed prior to the introduction of the national budget by the National Assembly through its committee for assessing the performance of each department. During the BRRR exercise, the department demonstrated their planned failures. The department informed this committee that they achieved 69% because of COVID. The country went into lockdown in March 2020, end of year under review. For the third consecutive year, this department unashamedly reported a huge under-expenditure in the administration sub-program of policy, planning, monitoring, and evaluation. This sub-program is meant to address the challenges such as intergovernmental relations, poor planning, and deficiencies in monitoring and evaluation. This department failed dismally on biosecurity. They could not spend 27 million budgeted towards fighting crops and animal diseases because of poor planning and lack of coordination. The country has since lost FMD free zone status. This department failed to implement blended finance and agri-BEE and cannot even account for the money transferred to the land bank. Food security program was a complete disaster. No commercialization of black farmers' success stories can be told. This department lacked the coordination between itself and other departments and gave a pathetic response towards the drought disaster. Planned budget allocation and disbursements and not reaching farmers, but instead end in corrupt ANC tenders whilst Red Beret conduct land invasions of arable land. The DA reject the pathetic work of this department. I thank you, Chair.
We now proceed to the EFF.
Thank you very much, House Chair. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are, Babu Montedi.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, we reject the budgetary review and recommendation report of the Portfolio Committee of Agriculture, Rural Development and Land Reform. In times of economic and social crisis, historically, agriculture has always been the sector that fires growth up all over the world. This is so because agriculture is catalytic to all almost every other economic activity. People need food before they can endeavor to other activities. Instead of realizing this potential here, and nurturing an army of aspirant black farmers, we are basically killing the sector off. The Auditor-General found that this department could not even account for the number of hectares plowed as a result of their support. Furthermore, House Chair, we as the EFF in the Portfolio Committee raised these issues before they could even be picked up by the Auditor-General. For the so-called COVID-19 Disaster Agricultural Support Fund, there were 673 approved applicants whose IDs numbers were invalid. There were 861 applicants who did not meet the minimum criteria but were approved, and 847 of these, there was no evidence of farming activity. But instead, over 521 applicants, real farmers who meet the minimum requirements, were not approved and are still struggling, and they were rejected for this. Even in times of crisis, when the nation needs decisive and visionary leadership, the ruling party still chooses to push our people down in order to loot and finance their fleshy lifestyle with money meant for the people. The less said about the returning of the land back to the people, the better. Plus, farms are given to MK comrades who cannot even grow wheat. This comprehensive agricultural support program is littered with fraud, and even the SIU has been called to investigate. Minister Mama Toko Dijiza, you and your department appointed us.
IFP.
Honorable Chair, agriculture, land reform and rural development remain critical to the socio-economic well-being of South Africa and its citizens. Due to past disparities, many of our rural areas remain underdeveloped and lacking in the provision of many basic services. This newly integrated department is one of the departments that are at the coalface of rectifying these disparities. It is therefore non-negotiable that this department falls short in any manner in its delivery upon mandate, which includes economic growth and development, job creation, sustainable use of natural resources, food security, and rural development. Chairperson, farmer support remains critical, and to those newly established farming operations must receive the necessary government support and aid to ensure that they become self-sustaining, reliable entities, thus ensuring the NDP vision of the inclusive rural economy. Farming methods must incorporate sustainable practices, and here we state again that great precaution must be exercised in the use of certain genetically modified organisms for maize crops in particular, as well as the use of herbicides and pesticides that may poison the soil as well as infiltrate our water systems, causing further damage and destruction. Glyphosate, such as is used in Monsanto's Roundup, should not be used until it has been proven safe for human and environmental health. Honorable Chair, additional serious concern remains the lack of urgency in investigation irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditure, which has been increasing over the years, often with no consequence management. And this must be addressed going forward, Chair. The IFP supports the BRRR, and the report, was read on behalf of Inkosi Cebekolo, who is a member of this portfolio committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. FF Plus.
Thank you, Chairperson. Since the last BRRR, we have seen many changes happen in this department. We have seen a department that has been quite arrogant and quick to blame shift come to the realization that the continual smoke and mirrors they try to uphold in front of us will not work. I have to commend the department that at times they do admit their weaknesses and show attempts at problem solving, though not enough to see real changes as yet. The HSA's findings and the department's regression in terms of their audit outcomes is worrying. Most of the findings that led to the regression is due to the forestry function that has since been transferred. The true test of this department, however, comes with internal controls, SEM processes, record keeping, and consequence management. All findings during this past year's audit will truly be put to the test in the coming year.
May they not disappoint and regress even further. We welcome the fact that the Agriculture and Agro-Processing Master Plan has at last found a home with NAMAC. My sincere hope is that this will not just be another talk shop and a failed project by the department. Chairperson, I believe credit should be given where due, but that criticism should also be given to work and improve on. Record keeping. It was a finding of the AGSA and a task that the department continually fails at. I see double work being done and items, project beneficiaries, land, etc. always being tallied and again and again with no clear outcome. No proper record keeping of who was given what, when, how much. Where is which land and in what state? Who has applied for assistance and who has not, to name but a few examples. We cannot continue on this trajectory, as South Africans will never truly benefit and the agricultural sector will never truly prosper if this is how we do business. Most notably of this, and probably my greatest worry and frustration with the department, is the way in which assistant, drought and COVID is dealt with. I hope to see improvement in this regard. There are many areas that require improvement. My true hope is to see genuine improvement in the future. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, agriculture is undoubtedly a primary economic activity in rural areas and has the massive potential for job creation in the country. The ACDP would like to express its deep gratitude to all in the sector, the commercial and emerging farmers, who right through the whole value chain, who have ensured food security in the nation, particularly during the COVID-19 hard lockdown. We also raised the concerning issue of the devastating fires in the Free State and Northern Cape rural areas and trust that government's promised relief is reaching all farmers in need. The ACDP is also not satisfied that enough is being done to protect farmers and farm workers. The rural safety program is not working sufficiently and needs urgent attention. Now, as far as the committee's report is concerned, the ACDP is concerned and shares the concerns that are raised by the committee that the unused funds should rather be reprioritized rather than being paid back to the fiscus. It's inexplicable when there's such need amongst our farmers that those funds are repaid. Secondly, the filling of vacancies is a massive concern, and the DG's position must be filled because we see a regression in audit outcomes, and that is a deep concern. So in view of these deep concerns, the ACDP will regrettably not be supporting this report. I thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Swart. UDM. Mhlonishwa Ngabayom. Akekho. ATM. Good. NFP.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. Chairperson, allow me to start off by commending farmers for the role that they played during the very difficult time of COVID-19 in ensuring there was food security and, of course, ensuring that our people and the country do not go hungry. And yet it was very, very difficult for them, but I think they've done a fantastic job, and I think we need to commend them for that work done. But having said that, the department must continue engaging with National Treasury on the reprioritization of unused funds within the department to address sectoral disasters such as droughts and disease outbreaks related to agricultural activity. The droughts in the country pose a significant threat to South Africans' food security. In fact, our food security is said to be threatened as it is. Now, we have seen reports also of these trucks that are getting burned, and a lot of them are carrying perishable goods to different parts of the country, and very importantly, also to our neighboring states in the SADC region who are dependent almost entirely on South African products. So all this is having an effect. A detailed report on the implementation of the COVID-19 Disaster Agricultural Support Fund, including a complete breakdown on the utilization of funds that were allocated for different purposes, must be released. The national opinion that it's imperative that all departments, including the Department of Agriculture, submit detailed reports on this COVID funding small-scale farmers, this is one of the areas where you can enhance the farming sector and also create jobs in South Africa. But what we find is this, that very often small-scale farmers are not necessarily getting the skills training, the financial management, and the necessary resources. You know, Honorable House Chair, giving them a piece of land is not going to solve the problem. You need to, together with that, ensure that they are skilled, ensure they have financial management, ensure they are able to conduct the businesses. The National Freedom Party will support.
Thank you. And AIC. Nirni Cope.
Thanks, Chair. Land and rural development are extremely important for the poor South African people. South Africans, and the majority are, of course, the downtrodden, the poor who live in those rural areas, need land for survival. Without land, they can not develop, they cannot survive really. Perhaps I need to refer you as an example to what the workers of South Africa did in 1998 when they came together and contributed about 89 million rand and said, let's have land for the poor people of South Africa. Now enough has not been done and more has got to be done. Now I want to rise and blame government for not having done what it is supposed to do. And what it's supposed to do is to say that the land that belongs to government, because government has more land that is there, but then it has not been distributed. Let them do what they're supposed to do, distribute land, make sure that the people of South Africa get that, so that the people of South Africa, the poor, can be able to work there, produce food, and so that the people can be able to survive. The issue of the hearings that have gone on for, I don't know, very, very many years have got to come to an end, and people must get land so that we can move forward. So let's come to an end with this thing. Let's make sure that there is implementation, and that is why COPE will support this, but say, let us make sure that we implement as a matter of urgency. We support. Thank you, Chair.
Al-Jama.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, the department should employ more agriculturalists to assist small-scale farmers to ensure that their crop is successful and to ensure that there is a market that will buy it so that they can at least recover their costs. We need to, the minister needs to look at the models used by the supermarkets to ensure that they get the vegetables and fruit. They upfront pay all the costs. When the crop is ready to be harvested, they pay a fixed price so the farmers don't lose out. Many of our farmers, when it comes to selling their products, they can't recover their costs. So this is a very important matter to take care of. I know of a company like Nestle, they need fresh milk. So they assist the farmers even with all their needs, and they buy it at a guaranteed price, and the farmer makes 100% profit. So why can't we help our small-scale farmers in the same way? Al-Jamaa supports the report. Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you. The ANC. The ANC.
Ayikho.
Babu Mandela. Inkosi. Ukhona lapha. He is here. Honorable Mandela.
Honorable Chair, Honorable Thapa
Yes.
here. I can take the declaration instead of
Yeah.
Honorable Mandela.
Yes, that's what we want. Thank you. Continue.
Thanks, Honorable Chairperson. The ANC takes note of the importance of agricultural sector in helping grow our economy and the potential for mass job creation opportunities. We are cognizant of the fact that in 2019, the agricultural sector contracted by 6.9% year on year, and this was largely due to drought and the outbreak of animal diseases like foot and mouth. And for this reason, appreciative of the work done by the department. We acknowledge that agriculture is a springboard to any economic industrialization and development, and recognize the importance of transformation for the agricultural sector towards growth and inclusivity. We have further taken note of the recommendation in the BRRR, especially as related to Agri-BEE Fund. In support of this BRRR, we acknowledge a need to radically implement a Black Producers Commercialization Program and the increased funding for the blended financing model, as well as effective implementation of the mandate of the Land and Agriculture Bank of South Africa. Lastly, we further acknowledge the impact of COVID-19 the effect COVID-19 had on monitoring and evaluation of the work that the department for 2019-2020, and encouraged by the fact that the department is attending to the AG's findings. Agriculture has a pivotal role to play in growing our post-COVID-19 and create economic opportunities for the many unemployed. As the ANC, we declare our support for the budgetary review and recommendation report on Vote 24. I thank you.
Malibongwe!
Honorable Inkosi Umandela, Honorable Mpushi, do that again, you will be removed. Honorable members, the motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections?
House Chair, please note the objection of the DA.
The DA, yes.
And the ACDP, thank you.
EFF, House Chair. The EFF.
EFF. That's all. Thank you very much. The report is no understand. The fourth to the seventh order, may I request the secretary to read them?
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour on third quarterly report regarding performance of Department of Employment and Labour and entities in meeting strategic objectives for 2018-19. Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour on first quarterly report regarding performance of Department of Employment and Labour and entities in meeting strategic objectives for 2019-20. Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour on second quarterly report regarding performance of Department of Employment and Labour and entities in meeting strategic objectives for 2019-20. Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour on third and fourth quarterly reports regarding performance of Department of Employment and Labour and entities for 2019-20.
Thank you very much. I will now call on the Honorable Dr. Nkabani to introduce the report.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour was briefed by the department and its entities on their quarterly performance report 2018-2019, 2018 and 2019, as well as 2019-2020. The department and its entities also took the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour into its confidence in relation to the strategic objectives. We considered everything that was presented before us. We then developed a report with, amongst others, observations and recommendations. It is that report that we are bringing this House for consideration today. House Chairperson, allow me to briefly touch here and there on the report we are tabling in this House. The overall performance of the department in quarter 4 of 2018-2019 to 83% in quarter 1 of 2019-2020 financial year. The department's performance on strategic objective 6 increased from 33% in quarter 4 of 2018-19 to 66% in quarter 1 of 2019-2020 financial year. On strategic objective 8, it increased from 75% in quarter 4 of 2018-2019 to 100% in quarter 1 of 2019-2020 financial year. The improvement in performance of these two strategic objectives resulted to an increase in overall performance from 72% in quarter 4 of 2018-2019 to 83% in quarter 1 of 2019-20 financial year. House Chairperson, there is no better time than the period we are actually in, where the strategic objectives of the Department of Employment and Labour could be more pronounced or relevant, because conditions that have been occasioned by COVID-19 are such that job market is under severe strain. So if you start by talking about occupational health and safety, which is one of the strategic objectives of the Department of Employment and Labour, and move to areas of vulnerable workers, the promotion of sound labor relations, the contribution in the employment creation, and so on and so forth, what is clear is that the Department of Employment and Labour has its work cut out. That is why we are chuffed, Honorable Chairperson, that in the first quarter of 2018-2019, there has not been an unauthorized expenditure. This is important because the effective and efficient use of the budget that has been cut to the bone is going to help us to cover more ground. And the Department of Employment and Labour is equal to the task, because due to the work that have been done in these quarters, they've been able, amongst others, to tell us that in the manufacturing sector, where there were it was the highest number of the sectors that had occupational health and safety incidents. Honorable members, the workers' lives matter. Workers must not be thrown in dangerous situations with impunity. They must not be thrown out of work carelessly and insensitively without thinking. If there is any review that may have to be done in our labor laws, that must happen with a view of strengthening them as opposed to neutralizing and relaxing them. Those who are at work must be kept in their jobs whilst we are getting busy ensuring that the reconstruction and economic recovery plan gets implemented with one of the key objectives of absorbing many of the unemployed. House Chairperson, this government has made tremendous strides. However, as the ANC, we won't be surprised by the approach that is going to be employed by the DA and others of playing on the gallery or grandstanding, because that is all they all about, and that is all that they offer in this house. Notwithstanding the challenges that were experienced in the efforts of the department to fight the COVID-19 pandemic, we must acknowledge the fact that entities such as the UIF their capacity tenfold in the space of few weeks. They were also creative in the sense that they formed partnership with employers and bargaining council to speed up the process of payment to workers who needed income support. Unfortunately, some officials, business people, employers, and private persons who had corrupt intent exploited the situation and sought to siphon off public funds. As the ANC, we have praised the department and law enforcement agencies for the swift and decisive action against the suspects. As we pay our respect to the late Auditor-General, there can be no greater tribute to him than the Department of Employment and Labour, as well as its entities, to strive for clean audits and to clean up what the AG called an already compromised control environment. As the ANC, we remain a caring and responsible government. We are also determined to fight and defeat the scourge of corruption. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Dr. Nkabani. The Honorable Chief Whip of the Majority Party, what do we do?
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, I hereby move that this House adopt the report as listed on the order paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before I call on the parties to make declarations, Honorable Whips and Chief Whips of parties, I think we have clear, it is clear which members always disturb the proceedings of the House. Please take note of your member. If you need training for those members, tell us, because it's the same people all the time that are doing this, and it is really disturbing. I'm not going to mention names, you are all watching. Please take care of your members. They can be trained on the usage of these gadgets during virtual meetings. Honorable members, this is not the BRRR report, so the usual times will resume or will be applied on the declaration of votes. Can I call the DA?
House Chairperson, we have before us another set of spectacularly unilluminating quarterly performance reports from the Department of Employment and Labour and its entities, covering the third quarter of 2018-19 and all 4 quarters of 2019-2020. Every quarter, the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour indulges in this grotesque ritual of irrelevance. We meet to monitor the department's progress against a bunch of unambitious, often meaningless performance indicators and targets. We then proceed to make a series of anodyne observations and toothless recommendations that are often completely ignored by the minister. Well, here are a few observations for you. Unemployment in South Africa is at an all-time high, thanks to the ANC government's policy incoherence and incompetence. 30.8% of South Africans don't have jobs on the strict definition of unemployment. That goes up to 43.1% when you include discouraged job seekers. The unemployment rate for those aged between 15 and 24 stands at an alarming 61.3%. We have on our hands not a sudden outbreak of unemployment, but a deep, persistent epidemic of joblessness. This government and this department are hopelessly ill-equipped to deal with it. They have no vaccine, they can't even diagnose our ills correctly, and they refuse to administer even the simplest remedies to alleviate the worst symptom. There should only be one performance indicator for this department, and that is the unemployment rate. When the unemployment rate is going up, we know the department's performance is going down. The bottom line is that the Department of Employment and Labour is not working for the unemployed, and nor are the Unemployment Insurance Fund, NEDLAC, and Productivity SA. Just about the only functioning entity in the department's orbit is the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration, the CCMA. But as we know from the Budgetary Review and Recommendations report, the government seems determined to hobble that entity too, with swinging budget cuts that will hit the most vulnerable the hardest. The Department of Labour was rebranded over 18 months ago to include employment in its name, but the department's structures and programs still haven't been reconfigured to tackle the expanded mandate of job creation. The department doesn't work for the workers, and it doesn't work for the workless. Instead of creating a fertile environment for job creation, the government and this department lob grenade after grenade at employers, employees, and the unemployed. President Ramaphosa failed to put job creation and labour market deregulation at the heart of his post-COVID-19 economic recovery plan. We face a tough set of circumstances: an economy shrinking by roughly 8%, a revenue shortfall of over 300 billion rand, and an incapable state borrowing 2 billion rand a day. Unfortunately, the economic recovery plan blindly and destructively pins its hopes on the incapable state to get us out of the mess that it created and exacerbated in the first place. The plan fails to recognize that only the private sector can create jobs at scale and rapidly absorb predominantly unskilled workers into the economy. That, in turn, relies on freeing up the private sector from the dead hand of state overregulation. So, here are a few recommendations. Let's take on the vested interests in big business and the unions. Let's initiate a program of labour market deregulation. Let's exempt small and newly established firms from extended collective bargaining agreements. Let's make it easier to hire workers and tackle youth unemployment with a real youth wage subsidy. Let's enforce the need for secret ballots on planned industrial action across all sectors of the economy. Let's empower individual economic sectors to set their own minimum wages and offer tax exemptions to small businesses to help them absorb the cost of minimum wages. If we do all that, maybe then we will see the department's performance go up and the unemployment rate come down. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chado. The EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The EFF rejects the adoption of all quarterly performance reports, Department of Employment and Labor, and its entities tabled before the House from the Portfolio Committee of Labor and Employment. We were elected as public representatives to oversee the executive and hold them accountable, and we are expected to do this in the most effective way. Oversight reports were intended to achieve oversight, nothing else. However, these reports offer little to nothing, and when we make recommendations to the committee, the party is prioritized over our constitutional responsibility to hold the executive accountable. The Department of Employment and Labor and its entities have failed horribly to execute their mandate, and we know this because every day, hundreds of people walk into EFF labor desk offices with matters that Department of Employment and Labor, UIF, and the Compensation Fund are responsible for. There is no labor inspectors to go to farms like ZZ2, Rishabile Security Company, Cell C, Roma Pharmacy, Clover in Egoroleni, and these companies continue to mistreat workers. Whites are continuing with the racism, unfair dismissal of workers without any assistance, and majority of the workers are Black and are women in particular. Sun International is busy retrenching Black workers, while white senior managers who earn millions do very little and they are not retrenched. Instead, workers are outsourced to stable labor broker. This includes the maintenance section of the hotel. As a result, Black majorities are faced with retrenchment on daily basis at Sun International in Sun City. As the Economic Freedom Fighters Chairperson, we are not going to wait for a department that has proved many times that it is incompetent and is led by the clueless minister and senior officials blinded by their arrogance and laziness. We call all workers to contact EFF labor desk if they experience racism, dismissed unfairly, and did not receive their tariff money. The EFF remains the only party that puts the interest of workers that the ruling party is allow companies to exploit as if we were still in the apartheid area. On the 14th of December, we are going to take the protest at the doorstep of Sun International in Sun City if the CEO of Sun International failed to stop the unfairly retrenchment that is taking place there in Sun City. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, IFP.
Thank you, Chair. The COVID-19 pandemic has led to record high unemployment rates, and the South Africans more than ever need assistance and guidance from the department and its entities. The department should play a crucial role in economic recovery and the creation of jobs. However, the department's ability to do this is questionable, as it has been shrouded in allegations of corruption and maladministration emanating from the UIF COVID-19 relief scheme. Although the investigations are underway, the lack of protocols, human capacity, and systemic inefficiencies, coupled with absence of leadership, leave much to be desired. However, honorable members, the department's entities have in successive quarters incurred irregular, wasteful, and fruitless expenditure. The Unemployment Insurance Fund in the second quarter of 2019-2020 recorded fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 79.8 million. Get that? This situation is completely unacceptable and shocking, to say the least. As a country, we cannot afford this kind of recklessness. Inkatha is highly alarmed about this situation, and we strongly endorse the committee's recommendation that the issues raised by the AG must be addressed urgently and now. The IFP will closely monitor this situation. In successive reports, entities have reported shortages in human resources and inadequate organizational structures as one of the challenges that resulted in some of its performance agreements not being achieved. But honorable members, we cannot ignore this situation. The department needs to focus on installing leadership structures that will promote ethical and professional behavior. In safeguarding the interest of workers, Inkatha Yenkululeko supports the committee's recommendation that the department should not deploy its limited resources to focus on sectors that reported high levels of non-compliance to legislation. Colleagues, the committee's reports on the third quarterly reports of the department and its entities' performance specifically notes that employers are still employing foreign nationals for jobs that do not require critical or scarce skills. And this issue, colleagues, causes extreme tension in our country, and the IFP strongly endorses the committee's recommendation that the department should cooperate with the Department of Home Affairs to address the issue of employment of foreign nationals for jobs that do not require scarce skills, and which should be performed by South Africans. Honorable members, the tragic reality, siyayixhasa sihlalo nangalezi zinto esiyirezayo. Siyayimukela i-report, siyathokoza.
FF Plus.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, I'm very worried about an apparent perception that exists within the Portfolio Committee of Employment and Labour that the ANC members advocate for the so-called workers and the opposition parties like the Freedom Front Plus only work for, advocate for, and represents employers. This view, held by the ANC members of the committee and repeatedly alluded to by the chairperson, is truly perplexing. For it is easy math to work out that without employers, there would be no employees. Without someone to work for, there would be no workers. And it follows that these two parties, employers and employees, do not stand, as the ANC sees it, on two opposite sides, being in conflict with each other. The one cannot exist without the other, and it shows poor leadership by the ruling party to publicly state that they do not represent both parties. It is our responsibility as an oversight body to ensure that all role players in the labour market are considered and represented through evaluation of the department's performance. Therefore, it is extremely worrying that committee reports hardly reflect contributions made by opposition parties because they are seen to be on the side of the employer, while these contributions are to the betterment of the department's performance and service delivery to all South Africans. There are many issues that are blatantly ignored because it is the so-called position of a certain constituency, and this, Honourable Chair, is unacceptable. We have never seen an unemployment rate as terrible as the one we have today. The department's expanded mandate of employment creation only exists on paper. We have a very big and real problem. We cannot afford to alienate and demonize those very role players who can indeed contribute to job creation in our country, who in fact are the only contributors to job creation in our country. The FF Plus cannot in good conscience support these reports because they are not a true reflection of proper oversight and do not hold the department to account. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable. Okay, ACDP.
Honourable House Chair, in considering the 5 reports for the Department of Employment and Labour and its entities, the ACDP noted that the overall performance of the CCMA went down from 78% in Q3 of 2017-18 to 63% in Q3 of 2018-19. Additionally, the CCMA had spent 93% of its budget by the end of Q3, which is far above the recommended 75%. What the ACDP has done is to follow the money, and it is clear that all is not well in this department. In Q3 of 2018-19, the department incurred fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 425,812 Rand. A total of 670,380 Rand of irregular expenditure was detected and reported during the period. This is an increase of 414,640 Rand recorded in the second quarter of 2018-19. In the fourth quarter of 2018-19, the department incurred fruitless and wasteful expenditure amounting to 2.9 million. This is an increase of 2.5 million recorded in quarter 3 of the year under review. A total of 1.5 million of irregular expenditure was detected and reported during this period. It is an increase of 832,573 Rand from the 670,380 Rand reported in the third quarter of 2018-19. The department incurred irregular expenditure amounting to 22,000 and fruitless and wasteful expenditure amounting to over 360,000 in quarter 1 of 2019-20. The department reported 3 cases of irregular expenditure amounting to 53,319 Rand in the second quarter of 2019-20, an increase of some 22,000. A total of 53 cases of fruitless and wasteful expenditure were reported amounting to over 602,000 in this particular quarter. In quarter 3 and quarter 4 of 2019-20, irregular expenditure amounted to over 460,000, with fruitless and wasteful expenditure totaling some 251,000 due to damages incurred to vehicles and as a result of accidents and no-shows, pardon me, Chair, and no-shows that were booked for booked accommodations. In quarter 4, fraud potentially amounting to 2.5 million was discovered as a result of payment and fraudulent invoices of the EHW services that were not delivered. A total of 372 misconduct cases were opened during the quarters under review. Clearly, House Chairperson, for the quarters under review, this department is riddled with fruitless, wasteful, irregular expenditure and fraud amounting to millions of rands. Additionally, the numerous cases of misconduct reflect the systemic and structural weaknesses in the department. The ACDP does not support this report. Thank you.
Time expired. I would request the whips to kindly inform their members that they only have 2 minutes to make these declarations. They mustn't prepare 3 and 4 minutes because they won't be able to finish their input. The UDM?
Sorry, Chair, on a point of order, Chair.
Yes, Chair. On a point of order, I understand that it's 3 minutes for these declarations in total. 3 minutes.
But anyway, you was way above
I understand,
the time.
Chair. I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The UDM? The ATM? Good. The NFP?
Thank you very much, House Chair. The National Freedom Party supports the reports tabled here today. Allow me to start off by making some suggestions, particularly in respect of farm workers. The National Freedom Party wants to submit that in terms of beneficiation for laborers on farms who quite often when they tend to retire end up without any housing and things, we're calling on the department to work together with local municipalities. So when these people are actually employed, together with the farm owners need to contribute on a monthly basis to the municipality. So when these people retire, with that contribution and the municipalities providing service sites, it will be a win-win situation so that our farm workers will eventually at least have their own homes instead of being evicted from these farms. The other problem that we tend to find in the labor sector to a very large extent appears to be the lack of commitment amongst laborers today, employees today, as a result of the protection that they tend to be getting by the CCMAs and the cost of doing business. And I think the department needs to engage with the unions and things because we are not competitive in terms of market to even enter the export market because of the high cost of doing business and the stringent labor conditions that we sit with. The National Freedom Party welcomes the recommendations as tabled in this report. However, what we want to stress is those recommendations, as good as its implementation, if you implement them, and of course, then you'd be able to move in the right direction. The National Freedom Party supports the reports of the Department of Labor tabled here today. Thank you.
Thank you. The AIC. Cope.
Thank you, Chair. The department and its entities claim that they have improved. My response is no, because if there was any improvement at all, then the unemployment rate would not be where it is now. Because you fail as government to create jobs, you have turned South Africa into a welfare state, which will not go on and succeed altogether in a few years to come. You say that the state-owned entities are doing well. My answer is no. Yesterday, for example, we were talking about the SABC and the kind of problems where it has been able to accumulate where SABC is at the moment. It is failing, but it is not SABC only. We here in the country talk about 700 state-owned entities, which are not doing anything, which are not taking our country forward, which are doing the same things as other entities are actually doing. Now, what you need to do is to cut them down, close the majority of those particular entities, so that we can be able to move forward as a country and save the money that goes to the majority of them, so that jobs can be created. I must call on the former General Secretary of the mine workers in South Africa, the present President of South Africa, Ntate Ramaphosa, and the former member of the Central Committee of the Trade Union Federation in South Africa, who is today the Minister of Labor, to say that they must do that which they fought for and not sideline other trade unions, small unions, which are sidelined when they, for example, go to NETLEC, to CCMA, to PSCBC, and others. Those other unions are sidelined. Why? Because it is said that they are small. And yet, Nelson Mandela did not do that. I remember when there was one trade union federation, when it was still alive, with 4 million members. But then when Mandela, his soul, rest in peace, when he convened the trade unions, he even took one small one, which had only 350,000 members, called SAT, okay? He took them, NACTU, he took them to that particular meeting, and we were able to go on. And now this one, which belongs to Ntate Ramaphosa and others, is actually just taken and nest so that it can be revived. Now that is wrong, and there must be improvement. Let all the people go and attend, because they too
Honourable Member, your time is now
they can
expired.
be able to take the country forward.
Thank you. Al Jama. Please don't
Thank you
intimidate the
very
former
much,
president.
Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, since the demise of apartheid and our new dispensation, big business is 10 times better off than they were during the days of apartheid. Our presidents after presidents have created an enabling environment for big business to thrive, to have export opportunities, incentives, and this we expected them to create jobs, and instead of doing that, they've held back on creating jobs. You can't say that if the unemployment rate increases, that the Department of Labor is failing in their responsibilities. Unemployment rates increase because big business are not employing, and they have loads and loads of cash. It was very encouraging to hear from the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee that there has been incremental improvements in the objectives set, even an improvement of 100%. Al-Jamaa supports the report, and we feel that the country must stand behind the Portfolio Committee and the Department of Labor, and that big business needs to re-examine their conscience and start creating jobs. In fact, we would like to recommend that Cabinet consider a policy of full employment in South Africa and then force them to come to the table. Thank you very much, Honourable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The ANC.
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honourable Members. As we discuss the oversight report of the Portfolio Committee on Employment and Labour, we must never lose sight of the fact that we are members of the Assembly to represent the people under the Constitution. The working class of our country yesterday celebrated a milestone 35th anniversary of the birth of the giant trade union federation, COSATU. We recall that COSATU was launched in December 1985 after 4 years of unity talks between unions opposed to apartheid and committed to non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic South Africa. Incidentally, the information of those who were not yet politically conscious and those who were not yet born, a certain young 33-year-old General Secretary of the largest union in the history of South Africa, the National Union of Mine Workers, played a central role in the unity talks and ultimately the successful launch of COSATU. For those who don't know the history of the South African working class, that the 33-year-old was President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa. I'm bringing up this chapter of history to remind the members of this House and the South African people that the working class is indispensable to our program of building a national democratic society. But at this point, millions of working families are in pain. The economic fallout from the coronavirus pandemic and the inevitable lockdowns imposed by governments all over the world to control infections has been borne overwhelmingly by the working class and the poor. Many workers who create the wealth of our country, workers in African continent and the world, remain in precarious employment conditions with minimal protections of jobs and of job security. Millions have lost their jobs, while the CEOs and fund managers on the stock exchange of the world have amassed billions of dollars. In spite of all the challenges we have in our country, the gains made by South African workers in terms of progressive labor legislations, such as the Labor Relations Act, are the envy of trade unions in other countries. Even the wealthiest country in the world, the United States of America, there is no paid maternity leave, no universal health coverage, and no right to strike. The gains of the working class have been achieved because the majority of the workers have entrusted the ANC with political power. However, experience has taught us that the protection in our labor legislations are not enough. Some employers have been able to find loopholes to exploit workers, neglect their safety in the workplace, and not pay them their dues. This reality is what has prompted the ANC to support key recommendations in this report. These recommendations that seeks to strengthen the capacity of the branches and entities of the Department of Employment and Labor that ensure the fair and just treatment of workers must be implemented. These recommendations include the need for the appropriate resourcing of the CCMA to deal with its extended mandate arising from amendments to labor legislation. Similarly, the resourcing and restructuring of NEDLAC is essential so that it can effectively and efficiently execute its mandate. particularly in the light of social compact that are urgently needed to resolve the developmental challenges and economic recovery efforts from the devastation visited on our country by the COVID-19. The long-standing recommendation of the committee that calls for the support by government departments to the supported employment enterprises by giving them preferential procurement status must be addressed. The recommendations pertaining to the department itself are crucial for the performance of our parliamentary oversight function. For instance, we have called on all the entities reporting to the department to use a uniform format of reporting financial and non-financial performance. Understanding that the resources of the department are scarce, but the challenge is enormous. We have recommended that the department should consider deploying its resources to sectors that have reported high levels of non-compliance with legislation. In order to fulfill its new mandate as the department responsible for employment, the committee has called on the department to also monitor and report on employment creation by other departments. Honorable Chairperson, I would like to conclude with the words from a song, Children's Bed, by Jimmy Cliff, the legendary musician from Jamaica. This is inspired by the shameful acts of some employers who did not contribute to the UIF while they were deducting money from workers, and those who claim from the special COVID relief test fund, but did not pay it over to their workers. These are kind of people the DA and the Freedom Front Plus regard as their core constituency. About such people, Jimmy Cliff sang, they took the children's bread and gave it to the dog. They took the children's bread and gave it to the dog, making so many people's life hard, making so many people's lives so hard. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. All honourable members. Honourable members, the motion is that the reports be adopted. Are there any objections?
House Chair, especially after that ridiculous last statement, the DA absolutely rejects this report.
The
ACDP.
ACDP as well.
House Chairperson, the FF Plus.
FF
The EFF
are there-
rejects.
The EFF, are there any other objections? Are there any other objections? There's no further objections. These reports are thus agreed to. The Secretary will read the 8th order. Let me just recognize the Honourable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. Honourable House Chair, may I raise a point of order? Thank you very much, Honourable House Chair. Honourable House Chair, I'm rising on Rule 92.2 on what transpired yesterday during the last order. I think it was just a human error where the chair did not recognize the ANC to make a declaration. And I regard that as a human error, and I wish that be noted by the House. Thank you.
So thank you, Honourable Chief Whip. It was definitely an oversight from my side. My apologies for that. And we've also asked the NA table to look at the guide that they give us so that they don't separate the ANC from the other parties. Once again, my apologies. The Secretary will read the 8th order.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Auditor-General on Integrated Annual Report of Auditor-General for financial year 2019-2020.
I now recognize the Honourable Somyo.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair, all the members. It is indeed a subject of fact that we meet today to consider this report when the curtain has closed in the life and times of the late Auditor-General Kimi Makwetu. That closure is a closure of work done with earnest excellence as the son of the soil who has presented his life, blood, spirit in all commitments. We today stand to present his work tied up, not necessarily with his own bones, stands to stand the time. The committee has considered that report, knowing very well that we are indeed faced with challenging times. That office, committed to work and its own commitment, has managed to make savings which are so significant in its own work of about 190 million rand, which we think that generation of such savings is not only based on the lack of operation, but it was based on the commitment to ensure that each and every rand and cent counts. That's why we seek to recommend to the House that in their own consideration of such, we should allow AXA to keep such funds and ensure that they build their reserves and serve the country even better. It is in our opinion as a committee that as we look into how the country has been ravaged by the scourge of corruption, and at the time when we might ensure that the increase of the requests for special audits might mount. If therefore that is the case, the consideration is to be given on our country's slow economic growth prospects and its financial impacts thereof. And therefore, we seek to urge the House to look into a fact that the heightened special audits who are going to serve the day should be supported by necessary funds which ought to be committed through this time. The AG should consider extending his current collection strategies to SOEs, because the SOEs are emerging, having to join local governments through indebtedness, their failure to pay what is owed to them, what they owe to the Auditor-General. In that case, we seek to advise the Auditor-General's office to ensure that the ring fencing of such commitments should allow its space to identify those who are affected and ensure that they chase them so they should pay the outstanding debts. The committee recommends that AXA should submit mitigation plans on how it plans to correct the persistent non-achievement of performance targets to ensure high quality of our audits. Targets to achieve 80 to 90% adherence to quality standard of audit engagements. Something which we have noted, it has been caused by the fact that some of the auditees submit financials only to comply. After that, they would want to withdraw such financials and delay the actual finalization of such audits and impact on the quality type of what is needed by the country in terms of the outcomes of the audit. The committee welcomes the efforts made by AXA to expand its audit portfolio, especially with the large and complex SOEs, as is the case with ESCOM and PRASA, which was in discussion later this morning. Auditor-General's office is starting slowly but surely to interact with those private auditors who have been charged with that responsibility for a takeover of such SOE audits, which is a tall order from our own side. And the AG...
Honourable Member, your time is now expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honourable Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Enkosi kakhulu sihlalo wosihlalo. Ndiphakamisa into yoba le ndlu mayamkele le ngxelo ithiwe thaca apha ejongane nala ofisi ka-Auditor General. Enkosi.
Thank you. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration. The opportunity to do so. The usual times for declarational votes will apply. The DA.
Thank you, House Chair. So, in a recent performance briefing to our committee, the AG's office once again reported billions of rand of unfair and uncompetitive procurement processes. Chair, that's a fancy way to talk about billions of rand of corruption. The new Public Audit Amendment Act, or as some calls it, Kimmy's Law, gives the AG the ability to hold government officials personally and financially liable for this type of corruption. The DA once again calls upon the new AG, Ms. Madaleka, to honor the legacy of the late AG, Mr. Kimi Makwetu, and use Kimmy's Law, that we may see those who steal and stole taxpayers' money held accountable. The DA supports the adoption of this report. Thank you, Chair.
The EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the EFF supports the report, and we want to congratulate the AG's office for leading by example, fighting against all odds, despite difficult climate, high levels of corruption of the ruling party that is corrupt to the core. AGSA had remained steadfast, reliable, and credible in their work, and this is reflected in their integrated annual report. It is disturbing that despite the excellent work that AGSA does, there seems to be attempts to sabotage the office and the National Treasury, and the Minister Tito Mboweni are at the forefront of this sabotage to the AGSA. We passed a public audit amendment bill, which was later signed into an act with an understanding that an additional responsibilities will come with additional funding of 50 million National Treasury. But because of austerity policy, the 50 million has not materialized, having all SOEs audited by AGSA adds to their as well, meaning more resources required.
I want to take a point of order. The Honorable Hadebe, what is the point of order?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm rising on Rule 84 and 85. Rule 84 is the use of the unparliamentary language. Rule 85 is the use of a substantive motion. The speaker on the platform has just said the Minister of Finance has sabotaged the Auditor General's office. I think that matter must be substantiated. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Member, I will look into answer, then I will come back with a considered ruling. The Honorable Mente, you may continue.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start on the paragraph where I was disrupted rudely?
Honorable Member, just continue with your speech. Where you want to start is entirely up to you.
We passed a public amendment bill, which was later signed into an act with understanding that additional responsibilities will come with additional funding of 50 million from National Treasury. But because of austerity policies, that 50 million has not materialized. Having all SOEs audited by AGSA adds to their responsibility as well, meaning more resources will be required. As a result, AGSA is underfunded. We want AGSA to conduct live audits and quick turnaround times, as we witnessed during audits of COVID-19 procurements that revealed widespread corruption of the ANC. AGSA must build internal capacity and not depend on external audit firms to perform its core functions. We must condemn all officials in government departments, municipalities, and state-owned entities who have now started to push back and resist audits. We cannot have a no-go audit zones. Everyone must be audited equally, and AXA must perform its functions without fear or favor. AXA must open criminal cases of officials who resist audits. AXA must fast-track the process to take over audits of large and complex SOEs, because we know that corrupt auditing firms such as KPMG cannot be trusted and should not be trusted with auditing of any companies, let alone state resources. We want to encourage the newly appointed AG Tsakani Maluleke to tackle the key performance targets with renewed focus and dedication to build a solid institution that will be better than when she was appointed. AXA must be willing to tackle difficult audits. We all want to know if people who sponsored the president in his CR17 campaigns are beneficiaries of state contracts now that he is a president. There are audits we want to encourage the AXA to explore, as we all know by now that kickbacks have become the order of the day in order for corrupt officials and leaders of the ANC to be beneficiaries of the state. Izolo, Chairperson, we were talking about a SCOPA report of the SABC. Those were the findings of the AG, but the AG will not do anything if this particular parliament is not assisting them in implementing its own recommendations. Thank you very much.
The IFP.
Thank you very much. Chairperson, the importance of the role played by the Office of the Auditor-General of South Africa in championing transparency and accountability in all spheres of government cannot be overstated. The Auditor-General is a Chapter 9 institution with a constitutional mandate to advance financial accountability in the public sector. However, the office does not escape from being audited and subject to stringent controls itself. It is for that reason that external auditors are appointed to express an opinion on the financial statements of AXA. Even the internal audit function is outsourced to external parties. AXA has certainly raised the bar during the COVID-19 audits conducted, and here, once again, we must pay tribute to our former outstanding Auditor General, the late Mr. Kimi Makwetu, who provided quintessential leadership in the office. Chairperson, an area of enormous concern found in AXA's audits of government departments and state-owned entities is the prevalence of unauthorized spending. Unauthorized spending amounted to an exorbitant 1.37 billion. Of particular concern is overspending and fruitless and wasteful expenditure because of poor decision-making, maladministration, and blatant neglect and inefficiencies. The IFP condemns unauthorized spending in government institutions and asserts that it is simply unacceptable and is an issue that is recurring and needs to be addressed immediately. Another area of concern is outstanding debts by auditees to the amount of 931 million, which is an increase of 171 million from the previous year. Although strategies to recover outstanding debt are in place, what is worrying is a sudden increase of outstanding debt from some SOEs and their agencies. Urgent corrective measures need to be implemented in this regard. Through cost containment measures, we welcome the fact that the office was able to generate a surplus for 190 million rand, and we trust that this money will be used wisely. We also, as a committee, looked at a special fund which was created years ago of 5 million rand, which the department will have to tell us why they still require it. A further concern of the IFP chairperson is resistance and pushback from some auditees who have physically threatened AXA staff when they come to conduct audits. A case in point is an instance that occurred in the eThekwini municipality about 2 years ago. We need to do everything to protect the lives and property of officials of AXA. Finally, as we attempt to lift our country from the ravages of the corruption and incompetence that characterizes this government, it is important that AXA consider utilizing its surplus, existing funds, and the allocation from National Treasury when it comes to tackle the internal control gaps identified, strengthen its ICT capacities, and embark on special audits. The IFP supports this report. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The Freedom Front Plus. The Freedom Front Plus. The ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP, like other parties, shared in paying tribute to the late Auditor-General, Mr. Kimi Makwetu. Many refer to his incredible hard work over years to stabilize the Auditor-General's office. And one of his lasting legacies is the amendment to the Public Audit Act, which enables the AG's office and law enforcement agencies to hold accounting officers personally liable for losses incurred at state departments, municipalities, and SOCs. Now, this was a very positive step in addressing malfeasance and corruption in these various sectors. However, the commitments made by National Treasury during the consultation phase prior to the passing of the Public Audit Act regarding the funding of those additional powers did not materialize. It was agreed that 50 million rand would be allocated for this purpose, and this is yet to be paid. And the AG has now had to use its own resources to finance this very important amendment, and this is totally unacceptable. Now, we also see that the Auditor-General is doing very important work in real-time auditing, and had that not have taken place during the COVID-19 corruption, I'm sure a lot of that would only have been discovered next year. This adds to the financial constraints of the Auditor-General. And in addition, as other members have pointed out, the AG is owed an amount of 931 million rand, which is up from previous year's 744 million by client auditees. This is also unacceptable. And clearly, if client audit departments are not paying, it impacts negatively upon the Auditor-General. Lastly, the ACDP would also like to highlight the pushback, the threats and intimidation against the Auditor-General. Each one of us in this parliament must condemn that in the strongest possible terms. And the result of pushbacks and delays is, of course, that this then delays and ends up with BRR processes not being finalized and Parliament not able to do its own work. However, that having been said, the ACDP will support this report. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The UDM. The ATM. Good. The NFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. First of all, the National Freedom Party would like to pay tribute to the late Kimi Makwetu for a job well done. In fact, he set the trend for the Office of the Auditor-General. But at the same time, we want to congratulate and welcome Ms. Sakane Maluleke, the new Auditor-General of South Africa. The AGSA has generated actual revenue of 3.7 billion for the 2019-20 financial year. This represents a 4.5% year-on-year growth when it is compared to the revenue generated in the 2018-2019 year. It is worth noting from this that AGSA has achieved a surplus of 190 million compared to 71 and 67 million in the previous two financial years. The surplus achieved during 2019-20 financial by AGSA can be ascribed to cost containment measures. Now, Honourable House Chair, for the 2019-2020 financial year, the debt owed to AXA has on overall increased. At the end of 20th March 2020, AXA was owed an amount of 931 million, which is more than the amount owed in 2018-2019. In conjunction with the Standing Committee on Auditor-General, in 2014, AXA introduced some enhancement collection strategies, which included ring-fencing of outstanding debts. During the amendment of the Public Audit Act, it was agreed that the additional powers given to the auditor would require an amount of 50 million, which should be allocated through the fiscus. This has not happened. And AXA has to use its resources to finance the implementation of the amended PAA. This has negatively impacted in the cash flow position of AXA. The National Free is pleased with the performance of AXA, is one of the best performing institutions in the country, and we'd like to implore on government to intensify efforts to protect AXA auditors who get victimized by public auditees. The Auditor-General informed the committee that his audit staff was being put under unnecessary threat to their lives and that the matter needed to be given attention. This must be condemned, and that the law enforcement authorities must act as a matter of urgency in matter. The National Freedom Party supports the report of the Auditor-General tabled here. Thank you.
The AIC. Cope?
Thank you, Chair and members. COPE supports the proposal that there must be special audits on all SOEs, the local governments, but then we want to say that even the provincial levels and government here at national must be looked at, because yes, it is true that those who are corrupt become more sophisticated, so that what they have stolen or what they steal may not be found. The corrupt, we want to say, are both politicians and the bureaucrats. I mean, if you listen to what is happening at the Zondo Commission, you are able then to understand what's happening. But we must indicate that we want to thank the late AG for the good work that he has done, and hope that the one lady AG that is going to be taking over does the best as well. Otherwise, if she doesn't, more plastic bags will be filled up and will be in trouble. Thank you.
Al-Jamaa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, the Sixth Parliament now have 2 silver bullets, what I call a double whammy, real-time auditing and holding those responsible for corruption in their personal capacities. So the Sixth Parliament may, at the end of its term, not be blamed like the other 5 parliaments for letting unauthorized expenditure and corruption slip through the cracks. And that's why the Sixth Parliament must find a way to ensure that there is money ring-fenced for this double whammy and these 2 silver bullets. And this also, now that we have a female Auditor-General with her energy and oversight, the Sixth Parliament has an opportunity to be one of the first parliaments in South Africa that made sure that that corruption is reduced and also unauthorized expenditure. Al-Jamaa supports the report. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The ANC.
Ke leboga modulasetilo Ntate Frolik. Ke thome pele ka go bontšha gore re bile le matlhoko kua motseng wa rena wa Seshego be ke go feta ka la boraro ka ge dipula ile tšana tša senyetša badudi ba kua mafasetere di-asbestos ga mmogo le dikoloi. Re dipelo tša rena di na le lena badudi ba Seshego. Re leboge masepala wa Polokwane le wa CDM ga mmogo le mmušo wa Limpopo ka ge ba ile ba kgona go kitimela kua go thuša badudi gore ba replace di-asbestos tšeo tša bona ka masenke. Re leboga mmušo wa Limpopo ka fase ga Ntate Tshupu Mathabata. Re leboga gape le gore ikonomi e tla boela sekeng, ra kgona go bona meletlo ya go tshwana le bo PSD ga mmogo le bo Sunset Social Market ya Makarapa, stokfeleng ga mmogo le the dark experience tšeo reng di booster ikonomi ya rena kua Seshego. Modulasetilo Frolik ke bontšhe gore re le African National Congress re tloga re support-a raporoto ye ya molekodi pharephare wa dipuku yo a ithwaletšego. Re kwa botlhoko ka gobane re swantse ba ebile raporoto ya gage ya mafelelo ye le reng o bea pele ga komiti ya rena kua kgweding ya October. Bjalo re mo ya gage gore ba le ka khutšo o be a bontšhitše ka ga raporoto pele ka tlhokofala gore ditlhotlo ebile tše dintšhi mengwageng e šupa ka mokana ga yona ka gobane bo molekodi pharephare e ba ya kwa dimasepaleng ba tšhošetšwa ba palela ko go dia mošomo wa bona, ba ya dikgorong tša mmušo ba tšhošetšwa ba palela ko go dia mošomo wa bona. Re kgopela gape le gore ka moka lena di-auditors patelang mošomo yo le reng le a tseba gore ke di-services rendered ka gobane ge le sa patele AGSA e tlo patela ko go dia mošomo wa yona. Modulasetilo la mafelelo ke bontšhe gore re amogela Mmetsakane Maloleke o thomile mošomo wa gage maabane ka di-1 tša Desemere o tlilo fetša mengwaga e šupa a le mona a bereka. Ke mosadi wa mathomo ebile e le wa mothomoso yo reng o tsorama maemo a
ke re ke a leboga re le lekgotla le legolo la modimo le badimo la African National Congress go support raporoto ena ke a leboga modulasetulo.
Malibongwe.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Order, Honourable Members. The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections.
House Chair,
Yes.
the DA approves of this report. Thank you so
There's
much.
no objections and the report is thus agreed to. The Secretary will read the ninth order.
Consideration of report of Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Government and Traditional Affairs on determination of remuneration of public office bearers of Commission for the Promotion and of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities.
I now call upon the Honourable Mpumza, who will introduce the report on behalf of the committee. Honourable Mpumza.
Thank you, Chairperson. Oh, thank you, House Chair. House Chair and the honourable members. The Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, having considered the draft notice of the determination of the remuneration of independent constitutional institutions, referred to it on the 8th April 2020 report as follows. The Speaker of the National Assembly referred to the committee the draft notice from the President of the Republic of South Africa, dated 26 March 2020, for the consideration of the report. The latter notified the National Assembly of the President's determination of the salaries and allowances of the members of the independent constitutional institutions in terms of the determination of the remuneration of the office bearers of the Independent Constitutional Institutions Laws Amendment Act 2014. House Chair, Section 14, subsection 1 of the Commission for the Promotion and the Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities, Act 19 of 2002, provides that the chairperson, deputy chairperson, and other members of the Commission for the Promotion and the Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities are entitled to annual allowances and such allowances or benefits as determined by the President from time to time by notice in the Gazette approved by the National Assembly. The Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers recommended to the President a 3% annual salary increment for all office bearers of the independent constitutional institutions earning above 1.5 and 4% salary or allowance increment for office bearers earning below 1.5%, with effect from 1st April 2019. Chair, taking into consideration the economic considerations in the country, its experience, as well as the current fiscal constraints, the President proposed alternative recommendations as follows. That salary freeze for office bearers earning 1.5 million and above, a 2.8% salary adjustment for office bearers earning between 1 million and 1.5 million, and a 4.5% salary adjustment for office bearers earning below 1 million. House Chair, having considered the above, the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs House Chair, having considered the above, the Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs supports and approves the intended determination by the President of the Republic in relation to the public office bearers of the Commission for the promotion and the protection of the rights of cultural, religious, and linguistic communities. Siyabulela Sihlalo. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I will now recognize political parties wishing to make a declaration, the opportunity to do so. And as I've stated previously, the usual time for declaration of votes will apply. The Democratic Alliance.
Honourable Chairperson, thank you very much. In April this year, the Portfolio Committee on Corporate Governance and this draft from the President on the remuneration of independent constitutional institutions, which is generally referred to as Chapter 9 institutions. And the notice contained the President's determination in respect of the salaries and allowances of senior office bearers in the CRL Commission. In essence, Chair, the President's determination proposed a salary freeze for office bearers earning 1.5 million rand per annum and a reduced increase for those earning below that 1.5 million benchmark. Chair, as a matter of principle, and given the very difficult economic circumstances that our country finds itself in, the DA is generally supportive of that proposal to freeze salaries of senior office bearers earning over 1.5 million rand per annum. But at the same time, what we also wish to recognize, Chair, is the invaluable contribution made by many of the Chapter 9 institutions in our country, and in particular, the role played by the CRL Commission to achieve their mandate of building social cohesion in our country. While I have this opportunity, Chairperson, let me also reiterate our deep concern for the very poor funding level of the CRL Commission. They receive 48 million rand per annum, which is massively insufficient for them to achieve their mandate, especially when one considers the very deep-seated divisions that exist in our country between different language groups, different cultural and religious groups, especially racial communities as well. But having said that, in respect of the salaries of senior office bearers in the CRL Commission, we would have preferred that the salaries of the ministers instead be slashed, and those savings be redirected to senior office bearers in Chapter 9 institutions whose work to serve our country is immeasurable. Whilst we welcome the initiative, Chair, of the President to freeze the salaries of senior office bearers at some Chapter 9 institutions, largely because of the current economic climate proudly brought to us by the ANC government, we call on the President at the same time to do the same with his own cabinet and freeze the salaries of his own ministers. We have far too many ministers who are useless and do very little for the huge salaries that they earn. The cost of their bodyguards alone is far greater than the entire budget of the CRL Commission, for example. That money could be much better spent on building unity and social cohesion in our country rather than protecting some of our useless ministers. The same principle of freezing salaries of senior officials should also be extended to some fat cats who languish in SOEs at the expense of the taxpayer. Yet they run those institutions to the ground and nothing happens to them. We are in the state because the ANC has run our country to the ground and there isn't enough money now to pay salaries. It is very unfortunate that the Chapter 9 institutions who generally do a brilliant job are the ones who have to be punished. Yet many government departments and government officials and senior office bearers who fail to perform bear no consequences for their actions. In fact, many of them continue to receive salary increases and performance bonuses, regardless of their terrible performance. Yesterday, we heard in this House, Chairperson, how the SABC has been falling apart because of high salaries and poor financial management. There are many more senior office bearers in some of these SOEs whose salaries should also be frozen. Chairperson, while we support the proposals in this report, we want to call upon the President to also conduct a review of the very high salaries that many senior office bearers earn in our country, as well as the huge performance bonuses that they receive, even when those institutions don't perform and are run to the ground. Those who live off the public purse must be held accountable for their huge salaries that they receive. And when they don't perform according to their expectations, according to our expectations, they must feel it where it hurts the most, in their pockets. I thank you very much, Chair.
The EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, we have just been told by the Minister of Finance that as part of their attempt to control the public wage gap, public servants will not be getting their salary increases for a while. As we speak now, the SAPC is planning to retrench hundreds of workers, purportedly due to the dire financial situation they find themselves in. If this is a genuine attempt to prioritize government spending, then it should be extended to political appointments too. But we know it is not genuine, and we seek to scapegoat public servants for bad management decisions taken by politicians. This determination on the remuneration and benefits payable to commissioners of the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities is proof that what is good for the goose is not necessarily good for the gander in the eyes of our leaders. We are one of the most unequal society in the whole world. This inequality is sharpened by an abnormal large gap in salaries in the public service. We have to systematically address this problem, Chairperson, and to ensure that those at the bottom of the wage gap have their salaries gradually improved, while those earning a lot already needs to make the necessary compromises. We do welcome the salary freeze for those commissioners earning above 1.5 million and the 2.8% increase for those earning just over R1 million. The 4.5% increase for those earning below R1 million a year should basically be a standard practice across the public service, not only in the Commission. Those earning less must be remunerated accordingly because most of the wage bill in the public service is as a result of the top-heavy management we have in this country. The same should be done at the SAPC and at ESCOM and other state entities that give executives management exorbitant salaries. There must actually be a deliberate attempt to cut down salaries of the executives in order to keep people at work and remunerate them accordingly. The FF welcomes these changes and we support the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The IFP.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. As with all the bodies established in terms of Chapter 9 of our Constitution, the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Communities is tasked with strengthening constitutional democracy. In a multicultural country where our people practice a multiplicity of faiths and speak multiple languages, the importance of the Commission's mandate to, among others, promote and develop peace, friendship, humanity, tolerance, and national unity among cultural, religious, and linguistic communities on the basis of equality, non-discrimination, and free association cannot be overstated. The Commission is further called on to be impartial and execute its duties without fear, favor, or prejudice. Having said that, in order to fulfill this essential role, we as the IFP believe it is necessary that office bearers are sufficiently remunerated. However, we do recognize the added financial pressures created as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and the need for budget cuts. We therefore welcome, as per the Portfolio Committee's report, the President's alternative recommendation regarding the annual salary increment for all office bearers. At a time when many South Africans were forced to make salary cuts or to take salary cuts, or indeed have completely lost their income, we believe the President's recommendations to freeze salaries above 1.5 million and to adjust the salary increments of those earning below 1.5 million to be prudent and necessary. The IFP accepts this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Freedom Front Plus. No declaration. Thank you. The ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. The ACDP rises in support of this report and has been said by the speakers that the President opted not to follow the recommendation of the independent commissioners for the remuneration of public office bearers of constitutional independent bodies, and instead proposed a salary freeze for those earning 1.5 million and above. And this is understandable and it is consistent with what this House has basically decided in similar recommendations relating largely to other Chapter 9 institutions. The ACDP would also like to commend the CRL for its statements made during the hard lockdown, when it called on all leaders of religious and cultural societies to support poorer communities during the hard lockdown with monetary support, with spiritual support, psychological support. The chairperson said that the lockdown has come at great cost, and we all know that, for the economy, the disruption of economic activities, and this resulted in high levels of unemployment, poverty, homelessness, and psychological and spiritual deficiencies. And we welcome that statement. However, we would have also appreciated if there had been greater steps to enable pastors, imams, and Jewish leaders to get permits for essential services. Many of them struggled, and it was then up to members from the ACDP and others that approached the DTI to get those permits for essential services. But in general, Chairperson, we support this report. I thank you.
Thank you. The UDM, ATM, good. The NFP.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The National Freedom Party notes the report of the Portfolio Committee on Corporate Governance and Traditional Affairs, and indeed we support the report and recommendations as tabled here. The Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Officers recommended to the President a 3% annual salary increment for all office bearers of the independent constitutional institutions earning above 1.5 million and 4% salary allowance increment for office bearers earning less than 1.5 million with effect from the 1st of April 2019. Taking into consideration the economic challenges the country is experiencing as well as the current fiscal constraint, the President proposed alternative recommendations as follows: salary freeze 0% for office bearers earning 1.5 million and above, 2.8% salary adjustment for office bearers earning between 1 million and 1.5 million, and 4.5% salary adjustment for office bearers earning below 1 million. In light of the fiscal constraint the country is currently facing, the National Freedom Party supports the decision of the President with the proposed alternative recommendation. Now, one other aspect I want to refer to, Your Honorable House Chairperson, is the delay in the traditional leaders amongst the Khoi and San, which has been passed and has been signed, in actually being remunerated. And I hope that this department will try and accelerate that process of making sure that you do justice to the Khoi and San traditional leaders in the country. The public service wage bill is overburdened and unsustainable and needs to be significantly reduced to ensure that service delivery is not compromised. The National Freedom Party supports the report tabled here. Thank you.
Before we proceed, may I request the ICT to take the notice that is appearing on the screens, to remove that so that we can see the speakers. The next speaker will come from the AIC. Cope.
Thanks, Chair. Cope support the report. Yes, let there be an increment freeze. When it comes to those who get 1.5 million and above, you have the lowly placed workers who are paid literally nothing, whilst they are the people who are actually doing all the work, be it here and outside the borders of this parliament and so on. Now, I want to agree with the EFF that cabinet, for example, is too big. I've raised this before, and costly. Yes, you talk about the bodyguards, you talk about very many ministers, you talk about deputy ministers. I think I've said this 4 times over the past 10 years. And we check the amounts of monies that they get paid. I said it goes to beyond 4 billion rand every year. The bodyguards, some get 12 bodyguards. They change when they come to Cape Town, when they go to Tshwane and so on. Now, these are major, major problems that we're faced with. And I want to believe that all the members from ANC and all the other parties will agree with me that look at, for example, what is happening in the USA, what is happening in China, where they have more than 1.3 million people, but then with only less than 18 ministers. I want to repeat, you have here a rally of ministers and deputy, more than 70, and this is a major problem. Therefore, let's agree, cut what they have been given and those other office bearers and make sure that we move forward. I know some of the members here from the ANC will say, no, 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 no. But then in actual fact, when we move out, they say, yes, you are correct. But then here, they say, no, 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 no. They too want to eat. Let the ordinary people be the ones who get something. Otherwise, we're not getting anywhere. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The PAC, Al-Jamaa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. I'm just very worried, Honourable Chair, but by reducing the increase, they will be slow to carry out some of their mandates. President Mandela has urged them to look at celebrating religious holidays where all South Africans celebrate the religious holidays of all the major religions. We have made representations to them that it is possible without increasing the 12 paid public holidays, but nothing has happened. Also, every kind of marriage is recognized in the country, but not religious marriages. It's 25 years now, and those of us who are in a nikah, some people of the Jewish faith, the Hindu faith, even the Christian faith, if they both have a religious marriage, then the women are considered, like the media has reported, as whores, and the children are considered to be bastards. That is unacceptable in our democratic dispensation, and I lay the blame squarely on the CRL for not lobbying for making sure that it happens. However, Al-Jamaa supports the report.
The ANC, Honourable Dereko.
Thank you, Chairperson. Before I could start, I would just want to raise, to note that we note the concerns that have been raised by Honourable Hussein. However, he should not forget that the challenges that we are facing today is as a result of the apartheid era, whereby our people were marginalized, and we also have a screwed apartheid spatial planning, which is resulting to the current economic challenges that we are facing today. And our ministers may be useless to him because he chose not to see the development that we are having in our country. And we can't expect more from him because he's a member of opposition. His role is to oppose everything. Even the positive things to him will always be bad. Chair, as the ANC, we note the report that has been presented to us, and we fully support the alternative recommendations by the President. South African economy suffered a significant contraction during April, May, and June when the country operated under a widespread lockdown restriction in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic further pushes the country ailing economy into a red zone. The statistics South Africa attributed the decline in the GDP to the impact of COVID-19 restrictions, which were imposed from the late March to June. And this may lead to major setback in our strategies to eradicate poverty, to deal with unemployment and inequality, and may also take the country many years to recover. Most of South African resources have been focused on the COVID-19 pandemic. Subsequently, the country has quickly adopted temporary monetary policy measures. On the 24th of June 2020, the Minister of Finance, Minister Tito Mboweni, tabled a supplementary budget economic recovery. In response to COVID-19, government provided economic support package of 500 billion to deal with the challenges brought by the pandemic. This was viewed as one of the largest economic response packages in the developing country, and it widely understood the impact of COVID-19 pandemic as it may still going to be with us for some time. Out of consideration of the above stated issues, the African National Congress support the proposed alternative recommendation by the President Cyril Ramaphosa. The proposed alternative recommendations by the President is that a salary freeze for the office bearers earning 1.5 and above, 2.8% salary adjustment for office bearers earning between 1 million and 1.5 million. 4.5% salary adjustment for office bearers earning below 1 million. Public office bearers do crucial work for our country, often in this trying time. The ANC as a governing party is firmly believer in the critical role of the state in developing our country. Working with the public sector unions, the government have over the past 15 years sought to improve a lot, and our government committed significant resources of compensating them every year. The government has tried to increase the numbers of public office bearers in recognition of their demanding workload. Chair, having stated all the above, the ANC acknowledged that the CRL Rights Commission plays a critical role in protecting and promoting the rights of cultural, religious, and linguistic communities. The ANC support the good work the CRL Commission has been doing while pursuing its mandate. The Commission is valued, particularly on ensuring different cultures are respected and equal citizen for all is guaranteed. It is worth noting that the CRL Commission in 2019 and 2020 has identified critical areas such as religious awareness campaign for the promotion and protection of the religious rights of communities. This will assist religious communities and members not to be victims of abusive trend within the sector. The ANC also desires that the CRL Commission could have more resources to open branches in all 9 provinces, and in future that it should be considered for budget increase because of their workload. The Commission has a huge role to play in strengthening social cohesion and nation building. We need a society that is cohesive to avoid inequality, exclusions, and disparities based on gender, class, nationality, age, disability, and any other distinction which causes division, distrust, and also to ensure conflict are reduced and eliminated in a planned and sustained manner. Our democracy as the country has been built under difficult circumstances where a society with a diverse origins, histories, languages, cultures, and religions came together with a unified constitutional and legal dispensation. A national public education system, an integrated national economy, shared symbols and values as equal to work towards eradicating the division and injustices in the past, to foster unity and promote countrywide conscious sense of being proudly South African, committed to the country and open to the continent and the world. Currently, the country is operating under a very serious financial pressure. We had a budget cut from all the government departments, and we also appreciate the fact that out of all these challenges our country is facing, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, was able to make provision for the salary increment for the office bearers. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the adoption of the report, which recommends, amongst other things, the approval of the determination by the President of the Republic in relation to the remuneration of public office bearers of the Commission for the Promotion and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Communities? Are there any objections? No objections. Agreed to. The Secretary will read the 10th order.
Consideration of appointment of Director of Parliamentary Budget Office in terms of Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act 2009, Act number 9 of 2009, and of Joint Report of Standing Committee on Finance and Standing Committee on Appropriations thereon.
I will now recognize the Honourable Buthelezi, the Chairperson of the Appropriations Committee, who will introduce the reports. The Honourable Buthelezi.
Honourable House Chairperson, honourable members, it is an honour for me to present a report on the appointment of Director, Parliamentary Budget Office. This was done according to Section 15 of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act 2009. After a thorough, transparent, and democratic process, Standing Committee on Appropriations and Standing Committee on Finance are happy to recommend Dr. Dumisani J. Janchis as the new Director of Parliamentary Budget Office as per report which is being tabled. It is tasked, that is the PBO, with providing independent, objective, and professional advice and analysis to Parliament on matters related to the budget and other money bills. Working with human resources and legal departments in Parliament, 9 candidates were shortlisted for interviews and their CVs made public. People were asked to comment, especially if they knew anything that made the candidates ineligible for appointment. Most of the comments were motivating or demotivating for candidates. There were a few which said certain candidates were not eligible for the position of the director for one reason or the other. There are those who said none of the candidates had requisite experience, and others claiming that there were investigations against individual candidates. Working with management in Parliament, academic qualifications were verified. Also, the candidates were vetted by the state security. There was a loud and persistent claim that 3 PBO deputy directors, including Dr. D. Janchis, were not fit for the job because of a forensic report. This was checked with the acting secretary to Parliament. Again, honorable members, that was found to have no merit. I'm happy to report to this House that all candidates that were interviewed were found to be fit and proper for the responsibility at hand. Finally, 6 of the 9 shortlisted candidates were interviewed. 3 had decided to withdraw from the process. The interviews were held on the 29th of September 2020 in Johannesburg because of its centrality. Again, to ensure transparency of the process, the interviews were broadcast live. Candidates were kept in holding rooms without TVs or any communication gadget. This was done to ensure that none of the candidates had an unfair advantage by knowing the questions up front. Honorable members, all the 6 interviewed candidates were of high caliber. They had requisite experience and relevant qualifications. This responsibility involves a lot of research. 5 out of the 6 interviewed candidates held PhDs in the relevant fields. We take this opportunity to thank these candidates for the preparedness and professionalism they showed throughout the process and the understanding of the responsibility of the Director Parliamentary Budget Office, which at all times must act with utmost independence. We also thank all those candidates who participated in the process, even if they did not make it to the shortlist. Unfortunately, honorable members, one of the candidates passed on, Professor Daniel Platkis. May his soul rest in peace. The minimum academic qualifications needed was a master's degree in public finance, economics, or related qualification. Dr. Janchis has more than 15 years of experience. He has conducted extensive research, fiscal and budget analysis, and also advising government at all levels. He thus understands what the challenges at local, provincial, and local governments are. He has a master's degree from the University of the Western Cape, MPhil, and another one from the University of Oxford, MSc. He obtained his Doctor of Philosophy, PhD, from the University of Birmingham. The title of his thesis is, quote, Use of Principal Agent Economic Model to Analyze Accountability in Public Finance. As you see, honorable members, even his thesis is relevant to the responsibility that he is being recommended for. For the last 5 years, he has been the Deputy Director of the PPO. Since 2018, after the director left, Dr. Janchis has been alternating with 2 other deputy directors as head of that institution. Throughout the years, they have supported the work of Parliament, especially Finance and Appropriations Committees, with dedication, diligence, and utmost professionalism. The Joint Committees of Finance and Appropriations recommend Dr. Dumsan Janchis as the new Director of Parliamentary Budget Office. I want to thank the subcommittee which I chaired, the parliamentary support staff who were at all times meticulous with their preparation. Also, the Standing Committee and Select Committees of Finance and the Standing and Select Committees on Appropriations for ensuring that an open and transparent process was conducted. And most importantly, the best candidate emerged. Ngiyabonga. Thank you, Honorable.
Thank you, Honorable Member. I will now recognize political parties the opportunity to make a declaration. Are there anyone from the DA?
Yes, Chairperson.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chairperson, let us start with a goal in mind. What is the vision for the Parliamentary Budget Office? The Parliamentary Budget Office should be an institution of outstanding international respect that earns a place among the great and independent budget offices of the world's legislatures. The PBO should add to the prestige and global standing of this Parliament and serve as an example to democracies around the world and in Africa of how to exercise proper independent budget oversight and accountability. It should produce original economic research of its own and budget analysis of its own and of the very highest quality. It should be a center of excellence, academic rigor, and unquestionable independence and integrity. Chairperson, I want a parliamentary budget office that is a powerhouse of economic analysis in its own right. That is the only lens through which I approached this appointment process. But if we are honest, our parliamentary budget office has not yet attained this vision, and in truth has fallen far short of it. Our PBO delivers analysis that is rather pedestrian and often relies on the Treasury's own analysis or research, which defeats the point. All too often, the PBO engages in policy disagreements with the National Treasury, which is not its mandate. And it does not produce the kind of analytical insight required to empower this Parliament to hold the Treasury accountable for the budget process, which is its mandate. The problem is not resources, Chairperson. Salaries in the PBO are extremely generous, too generous even, and are way above similar positions in the private sector or in academia. That is why I earnestly believe that we should not make this appointment today. Rather, I believe that if we all have the very best interest of the PBO at heart, that we should re-advertise the vacancy and spend more time recruiting the kind of candidate who will devote themselves to building this young institution into the powerhouse it should be. That is not to say, Chairperson, that there was anything improper or unfair in the interview process. There was not. The interview process was very fairly and transparently carried out. But of all the candidates who applied, there was really only one standout candidate, and that was the late Professor Plaatjes, who this House paid tribute to last week and who sadly passed away just days after his interview for this position. This position has been vacant for more than a year, and there has been an acting director who has been keeping things ticking over during this time. So there is no immediate rush to fill this vacancy now. Let me end with a practical suggestion. The Speaker should write to every economics and finance professor who holds either an A or B rating from the National Research Foundation and ask them to consider applying. Those who have experience in building successful economics and finance departments in their respective universities or with management experience as deans should be immediately shortlisted. That way, we have a better chance of recruiting the kind of talent who will build this institution into the powerhouse it should be. In the absence of the withdrawal of this item today, we must respectfully object. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The EFF.
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair, in terms of Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act of 2009, Section 8, the process to adopt fiscal framework and revenue proposals allows for the Standing Committee on Finance and the Select Committee on Finance to submit a report on the fiscal framework and revenue proposals. The wisdom of the Money Bills Act was to ensure that Parliament does not rubber stamp Finance Minister proposals without due consideration. The Act gives Parliament powers to amend the fiscal framework and revenue proposals. To ensure that Parliament amendments contain an appropriate balance between revenue, expenditure, and borrowings, ensure that debt levels and debt interest costs are reasonable, and all other requirements are met, Parliament must establish a Parliamentary Budget Office. A Parliamentary Budget Office is meant to support Parliament to implement the money bills, including amending fiscal framework and revenue proposals. The Act gives Parliamentary Budget Office the responsibility to undertake research and analysis for the committees. However, Chair, the unfortunate reality is that in the 10 years that the Parliamentary Budget Office has been in existence, it has been a complete disaster. It failed to add any meaningful value to the process of budgeting. Instead, Finance Minister and National Treasurer continue to dominate and dictate terms of passing budget. Despite legislation that allows Parliament to amend fiscal framework and revenue proposals, Parliament has never amended fiscal framework or revenue proposals. While this has largely been the result of the ruling party, there is no sense of alternative macroeconomic policies. The incompetence and complete disarray of Parliamentary Budget Office has certainly made things worse. In the 5th Parliament, Chair, The Parliamentary Budget Office behaved as though they were some researchers of the ruling party study group and personal secretaries of the former chairperson of the Standing Committee of Finance, who is now demoted to the NCOP. The whole office, together with the former director and the current staff, failed to adhere to key principles of institutional and political independence. Instead of helping committees and members of parliament to give a credible and transparent alternative proposals to heterodox failed economic fiscal frameworks, they failed to give us an alternative to austerity measures. They failed to give us concrete and clear funding for free basic education. They have not offered any alternative to public servant salary freeze. They conducted themselves as if they were an extension to the National Treasury, a National Treasury office within Parliament. South Africa's public finances are in shambles, and the office did nothing to enhance Parliament's credible oversight. What is more shocking is that we now expected to appoint a director without a thorough assessment of the office and the first director, a process that was rushed. Any of the people who worked in that office in the last 10 years must be associated with its incompetence, failure to be independent of politics, and inability to create credible advice. By considering the proposed justice chair, the National Assembly is doing itself a serious injustice. The EFF does not support the committee report. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The IFP.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson. Honourable Chairperson, firstly, I want to agree with what Honourable Lewis and the EFF member have said in terms of the efficiency and the operation of the office of the PBO. However, I do not think that we should blame or hold an individual responsible for what has been a governance issue. I was part of the committee that looked at the money bills related bill from inception. I was also part of a study group tour to African and Western countries where we looked at how the office of the PBO should function. And yes, Chairperson, the honourable members are quite correct. The office of the PBO has not provided the kind of function that we as members of parliament should have expected when you compare with the kind of function they perform in other countries. Its performance has been limited to serving certain committees only. And yet it should be a responsibility to serve even individual members of parliament in empowering them to be able to analyze budgets and for us to even propose amendments to budgets. I think in my career in parliament and with many of our colleagues seated there and on virtual, we have I don't think we have amended any budget that has been tabled by the executive. And yet it is our responsibility as parliament, as a separate authority, to look and to analyze and scrutinize these executive produced budgets and amend where necessary. And we have the legal powers to do that. But having said that, Honourable Chairperson, we believe that the subcommittee did its work fairly. And all the candidates were open to public scrutiny. It is a pity that the late Professor Daniel Plaatjes passed on, because I understand that he was an outstanding candidate. But what we need to do is to ensure that there is leadership in that office. And I think one of the problems has been that for some time now, there hasn't been leadership to guide the office. And we hope and we support the appointment of Dr. Jantjies. I have worked with him and I know that he will be able to offer the kind of leadership that is required of this office and to listen very carefully and take note of what all of us as members of parliament have said in this debate with regard to the functioning of the office. So we would support the office and support the appointment of Dr. Jantjies. We wish him well and we trust that he would bring a new flavor to the office of the to the PBO office and execute its mandate effectively. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The Freedom Front Plus, the ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP fully appreciates and understands the crucial role that the Parliamentary Budget Office plays and should play in providing independent, objective and professional analysis to Parliament on budget and on other monetary bills. I was part of the overseas study tour to look into budget offices internationally, and we were very impressed, particularly with the Kenyan model, and we hope that that would be emulated in South Africa. But 10 years later, we still see major concerns, major challenges with the PBO's office. And in the Justice Committee, the ACDP has recommended amendments to the Justice budget vote, but we weren't able in the time limited to push that through in terms of the powers, in terms of the Money Bills and Related Matters Act. So there are challenges in the execution of our powers as Parliament in terms of that act. Now, I've studied the process here. It's been open and transparent, and I don't want to infer anything negatively about the person that's been nominated, but we do see that Professor Daniel Plaatjes, who passed away very tragically, would have stood out head and shoulders above. And so possibly it would be wise to hold this over to a consideration of this issue, given the challenges that has been faced. But I appreciate that it was an open and transparent processes, but given the challenges in the PBO's office up to now, and the fact that it is very limited, and as other members have spoken, regrettably, the ACDP cannot support this nomination at this stage. Thank you.
The UDM, the ATM, good, the NFP.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The National Freedom Party notes the report and welcomes the manner in which the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriation, Honorable Buthelezi, had articulated his side of how the processes that were followed, and the fact that he gave substance particularly to the credibility of all the candidates that were shortlisted, which is very, very important. But having gone through the resume of Dr. Jantjies, over and above the fact that, you know, we've had the opportunity of engaging with him in the Standing Committee on Appropriation over a period of time, the National Freedom Party is quite satisfied. Also taking into consideration that, you know, there were a limited number of people that had actually applied for the post. And I don't agree that we need to go out and start, you know, basically looking for people to come out. We've done the necessary processes. We have advertised, people have applied, and I think with you. Now, I think what is very important here is this, that we need to understand the PBO is in place. It is a requirement in terms of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act. If there is something we're unhappy about the way PBO does its work and its business, then indeed I think it's something we need to interrogate. Like I've heard that we've been on travel and we've come back and we found the way other countries operate, then maybe we need to engage PBO and make them do things differently for us. But I think if you take the resume, if you look at the skills, the extensive skills, in fact, if you Mr. Jantjies, Dr. Jantjies holds at this point in time, the different qualifications that he's had and the manner in which he's conducted himself over a period of time in the, you know, appearing before the Standing Committee, we believe that he has the proven ability to provide advisory services at various strategic levels in both professional and economic environments. He has further demonstrated a strategic ability to participate and lead a strategic engagement at various international levels. And remember that he's one of the guys that if you engage him on any matter, he is quite willing and articulates himself so well. So we believe under the circumstances that yes, indeed, PBO must have this position filled and that he is the right candidate. So the National Freedom Party will support the appointment of Dr. Dumasani Joseph Jantjies to the PBO.
The AIC. Cope.
No statement from Cope, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Al-Jama. Al-Jama. The ANC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair of Chair. I wish to preface my speech by indicating that it is unfortunate that the death of the Honorable Doctor is being used in the House, because we know it for a fact that Honorable Hill Lewis for the DA chose a white, middle-aged male. And today he's talking about global and international. And yet we all heard how his choice was not even national in terms of experience. The Money Bills Amendment Act, the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act number 9 of 2009 provides for the establishment of the Parliamentary Budget Office. Section 15(1) of the Act reads as follows, I quote, "There is hereby established a Parliamentary Budget Office headed by a director, the main objective of which is to provide independent, objective, and professional advice and analysis to Parliament on matters related to the budget and other money bills," unquote. Its core function is to support implementation of money bills, provide reviews, research, and analysis of documentation tabled in Parliament by the executive, provide advice, analysis on proposed amendments to fiscal framework, DORA, and policy proposals with budgetary implications, keep abreast of policy debates and developments in key revenue and expenditure areas, monitor, report, and advise on potential unfunded mandates arising out of the legislative policy or budgetary proposals. It is indeed pleasing for the ANC to confirm somebody who is already performing the task, and the honorable members have been empowered in their oversight work by the capable directors who have been alternating in the absence of a permanent employee. The ANC wishes to commend all three who acted in the position and offered outstanding performance, Dr. Mohammed and Dr. Orlando. It was not easy making the decision, as all displayed outstanding performances at different times. Difficult as it may be, the ANC believes that no matter how difficult, leadership is equivalent to decision-making. Part of leadership of society is the ability to take those difficult decisions. The transformation agenda is for the ANC not just fundamental, but critical. Hence, the work done by the subcommittee was supported by the relevant committees in both houses, the NA and NCOP. And as Chairperson has outlined, the public also got an opportunity to participate in the process, and the decision taken has been enriched by the inputs of interested stakeholders. It is not just a learning curve for the committee, but also an empowerment tool for the incoming director. We believe as the ANC that the future of any country is safely invested in its youth. Having said that, the youth is encouraged to empower themselves with the requisite skills in order to make meaningful contribution to nation building. The name of Dr. Dumisani J. Jantjies as PBO Director is supported by the ANC. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. That brings us to the end of the declarations. Honourable Members, are there any objections to the appointment of Dr. Dumisani J. Jantjies as Director of the Parliamentary Budget Office with effect from 1 December 2020 and the adoption of the reports of the Standing Committee on Finance and the Standing Committee on Appropriations thereon? Are there any objections?
House Chair, please note the objection of the Democratic Alliance.
Objection is noted.
The ACDP as well, thank you.
Noted.
Please note the objection of the FF+.
Noted. Are there any further objections? Honourable members, whilst noting those objections. Yes, Honourable Member.
Please note the objection of the EFF.
Noted. Honourable members, with those objections, the report is agreed to, confirming the appointment of Dr. D.J. Jantjies as the Director of the Parliamentary Budget Office. The Secretary will read the 11th order.
Decision of question on report of Portfolio Committee on Higher Education, Science and Technology on 2019-20 first quarter financial and service delivery performance report of Department of Higher Education and Training.
Honorable members, order. I wish to remind you that on Thursday, the 12th of March 2020, this matter was debated in the Assembly. The decision of question on the adoption of this report was postponed. Are there any objections to the adoption of the report? No objections, agreed to. Honorable members, I will now suspend proceedings and wish to remind members that we will continue with the 12th order at 3 p.m. this afternoon. Bells will be rung to alert members to the resumption of business. Business is now suspended.
Yemen, which was that?
Yeah, Pumza.